Hey everyone, if you love scary stories, hit that subscribe button and join the creepy crew. Huge thanks to everyone who's already subscribed. You're the reason these stories keep coming. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. I knew him for a few years. We worked together at a small restaurant just outside of town. He was the kind of guy who always smiled at the customers, made jokes with the regulars, kept the vibe light even when the place was packed. People liked him. He wasn't fake about it either, just naturally good with people. I handled more of the back-end stuff, kitchen prep and dishes, so I saw him mostly during shift changes or short breaks when we'd share a smoke behind the dumpster. One night, maybe mid-November, I noticed a woman who started coming in every few days. She always sat at table 6 by the window. She'd order the same thing, grilled veggie panini, small tomato soup, and a latte. Nothing fancy. She wasn't flashy either. Just a simple, clean look, like someone who didn't need attention. My friend noticed her from the first visit, but didn't do anything about it for a while. He kept talking about her after shifts, though. Said she had this quiet way of smiling that made you think she was really listening to everything. I told him to just ask her name. Took him maybe 2 weeks before he finally spoke to her. She said she liked the way he made the lattes. That was enough. They started talking more. She gave him her number without him even asking. I remember how surprised he was about that, like he expected to have to work for it. After that, they messaged constantly. I'd see him tapping away on his phone during every break. He wasn't like that before. He used to just scroll sports updates or check weather. Now it was non-stop chats, and he looked like he was somewhere else half the time. They started meeting up outside work. He talked about her like she was different than anyone he'd met. Said she was serious, but in a cool way. After maybe 3 weeks, she agreed to come over to his place. He was thrilled. Told me it might be fate. I didn't say anything, but something about how fast it moved felt off to me. Not wrong, just fast. Like he was jumping steps. But it wasn't my business, so I didn't push. He just rented a small one-bedroom apartment a few streets over from the park. It was clean, modern layout, with a narrow balcony that faced the edge of the trees. Nothing fancy, but the kind of place you could feel good bringing someone to. Parking lot was small, maybe 6 spots, and half of them were always empty. He said he liked that, felt private. A few hours before she was supposed to come over, he asked me to swing by and help in the kitchen. He had this idea of cooking something impressive but not too formal. Chicken with lemon and herbs, some kind of salad with nuts and goat cheese. I came by around 4. He was already buzzing around, chopping things, laying out ingredients like he was hosting a cooking show. What caught my eye was the table. He'd picked up a cheap ceramic dinnerware set, white with little blue edges, and had set it like it was a wedding rehearsal dinner. Real napkins, real glasses, even fresh flowers. I asked where he got those and he just said, I wanted it to look nice. He even pulled out that blue shirt he kept in the back of his closet, the one I'd only seen him wear once at a staff party. By the time I left, the apartment smelled amazing and he looked nervous in a good way. She showed up a little after 7. She wore a simple black dress, hair down, no heavy makeup or anything. She looked relaxed. I stayed out of the way, just left him to it. The next day, I stopped by around noon. He was sitting on his couch looking half dead, like he hadn't slept. He told me the dinner went fine at first. She laughed at his jokes, asked about the kitchen work, said his cooking was better than any restaurant she'd been to in weeks. He said she told stories about road trips with her friends, one where they ran out of gas in the desert and had to sleep in the car. But then, around 11 after dessert, he started to feel weird. Not drunk, just dizzy. He hadn't had more than 1 glass of wine, and she hadn't either. He said his head felt light, like the walls were too far away. His legs felt rubbery. He went to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, came back out and tried to act normal, but he could barely stand up straight. She asked him if he was okay. He told her he didn't know. Then he sat down on the couch and said the room started spinning slowly. Not fast like vertigo, just a slow, turning motion that made everything feel off balance. His skin was cold, but he was sweating. That's the last thing he remembered clearly before everything went dark. When he opened his eyes, it was just before dawn. The apartment was quiet. His phone was on the floor, screen cracked. The front door was shut, lights off. He sat up slowly, still dizzy, heart pounding. The blanket was pulled up over him like someone had tucked him in. His wallet was missing. According to him, after he started feeling dizzy, she stood up right away and helped him to the couch. She told him to lie down, said it was probably just exhaustion, maybe low blood sugar. She even brought him a glass of water and sat beside him for a bit, saying things like, "It's okay, you just need to rest." He said her voice was calm, gentle, but he couldn't hold on to her words for long. His hearing faded in and out, like someone was turning down the volume. The next thing he remembered clearly was the beeping of machines. Harsh white light. Tubes in his arm. His mouth dry like sand. I visited him the next afternoon. The doctor said he'd been conscious only in short periods, maybe a minute or two at a time, then slipping back under. He couldn't speak, only move his eyes, sometimes twitch his fingers. When I asked what happened, no one could say for sure. Blood tests showed a rare compound in his system, something the toxicologist said wasn't commonly seen, not in civilian hospitals. It wasn't anything you'd find in over-the-counter meds. It didn't knock him out instantly, but it gradually suppressed his nervous system. His heartbeat slowed. Reflexes faded. They said it had been mixed into a drink. Not enough to kill him right away, but enough to do damage. I kept trying to think back to that night. I'd been there while they cooked. I saw him pour the wine. I didn't see her bring anything in, but maybe she had something in her bag. Or maybe she did it while he was in the bathroom. It all seemed so normal. No alarms, no warning signs. After that night, she vanished. Her phone line was dead the next morning. All her social media accounts were wiped. She never came back to the restaurant. Nobody could even remember her real name, if she ever gave it. He just knew her as Anna, but that could have been fake. The police checked the apartment and found some fingerprints, but none matched anything in the database. The wine glasses were clean. The plate she used was still in the sink. No real trail. She didn't return to the address she once gave him, and the person living there said no one by that name had ever lived in the building. Without witnesses or a motive, the case stalled. Meanwhile, my friend was still in the hospital, barely recognizing me. His speech was broken, slurred and delayed. His short-term memory was a mess. The guy who once charmed customers with quick jokes now stared at the ceiling in silence. I tried everything I could to help after he was discharged. I took him to therapy appointments, made sure he stuck to the rehab schedule, brought games and puzzles, introduced him to a couple of my friends so he wouldn't feel isolated. But he wasn't the same. The light in him was gone. He could walk, eventually, but slow and stiff, like he was learning again. Talking was hard. Sometimes he couldn't find words. Other times he mixed up simple things, called a spoon a knife, or forgot what a TV remote was. The doctors said parts of his brain were damaged by the substance. They didn't think he'd ever get back to full function. He might regain more words, maybe even some independence, but the guy I used to know, funny, clever, sharp, was mostly gone. He couldn't work anymore. Even holding a tray or remembering an order was out of the question. I picked up extra shifts at 2 other places just to help cover his rent. His parents lived across the country, but they started sending what they could each month. Still, I was the one doing most of the day-to-day. Helping with bills, grocery shopping, managing calls from doctors. After about 4 months, he could move around the apartment without help. He cooked simple meals with my supervision, but he couldn't remember that night clearly. He asked about it often, like the memory was stuck behind a locked door. I'd tell him what I could, but even that didn't bring it back. The psychologist said it was trauma, not just brain damage, the mind's way of protecting itself. It became a quiet warning to all of us about trusting people too fast, about how danger doesn't always look like danger. That woman had seemed completely normal, friendly, polite, even sweet, but she left him half paralyzed, stripped of his future. Months later, I got a call from the detective who'd been on the case. He said there'd been a few similar reports recently, all in different cities, same pattern. Man meets woman, quick connection, dinner at home, something slipped into the drink. Symptoms varied, but always neurological damage. No arrests, no clear identity for the woman. It was like chasing smoke. I tried to make some noise about it. Made a post online explaining what happened. Shared photos of my friend from before and after. Asked people to be cautious, to look out for each other. But the post didn't go far. A few shares, a handful of comments, then it sank under everything else. Eventually, he had to move back home. His parents came and packed up his things. They hired a caregiver in their town and registered him for long-term disability. I still visit him when I can, take a train once every month or two. We sit in the backyard of their house. He doesn't talk much, but he always asks the same thing. Did you see her again? He can't remember her name anymore. Just her. The doctors said his condition is stable. He won't get much better, but he won't get worse either. They manage his meds and keep him comfortable. He's not in pain, but the life he had, the person he was, that's gone. Sometimes I lie awake thinking about what I missed, about how none of us saw it coming. She smiled like anyone else. She laughed at his jokes. There was nothing in her eyes to suggest what she would do. That's the part that sticks with me. How easy it was to hide behind charm. How fast things can fall apart when you let your guard down. Now I always think twice. I watch people differently, and I'll never forget what it cost him. I never used to have time for dating. I was working full-time at a beauty salon, sometimes staying after hours to clean or help a coworker catch up with a late client. My apartment was just a small studio with a kitchenette tucked into the corner of the living room. Most nights I'd just get home, microwave something simple, maybe scroll through my phone for a bit, and crash. It wasn't much, but it was quiet and predictable. A few months back, I downloaded a dating app. Not because I was really looking for something serious. I just thought it might be nice to talk to someone in the evenings, maybe go out every once in a while. That's when I matched with Mark. His profile was simple. He looked clean, had a nice smile, worked in IT, and liked old movies and hiking. What really stood out, though, was how he talked. He was always asking about my day, remembered little things I said, and gave small compliments that didn't feel forced or cheesy. We started messaging almost every night. After about a week, we met for coffee at a place close to my work. It was quick, casual, but nice. He seemed normal, well-dressed but not flashy, calm, and he listened more than he talked. We ended up meeting again that weekend and walked around the mall, just window shopping and talking. He didn't try anything weird, didn't rush anything, and I appreciated that. After a few more outings, nothing fancy, just small, comfortable stuff, he invited me over to his place for dinner. He said he'd order takeout so we could just relax and not worry about cooking. I agreed. It felt like the natural next step, and I told myself that if anything felt off, I could always leave. But when I got there, everything seemed pretty normal. His apartment was in a newer building, kind of out of the way but still not far from downtown. It was on the 3rd floor, and the hallway leading to his door smelled faintly like detergent and something floral. Inside, it was almost too clean, like a show apartment, with no clutter anywhere. The furniture looked new, all in neutral tones, gray, white, and black. There was a big TV mounted on the wall, and framed posters of old black and white films lined the hallway. Everything had its place. We sat on the couch, and he let me pick the movie. I chose a romantic comedy from the early 2000s, something light. He ordered Thai food, and we sat cross-legged on the floor with the containers open between us. We ate, joked about the characters in the movie, and just talked. I felt comfortable enough to take my shoes off, and he brought out a blanket when it got a little chilly. Around midnight, he asked if I wanted to stay over. I hesitated for a second, not because I was worried, but because I had an early shift in the morning. He said he had a spare toothbrush and could make coffee before I left. That made it easier to say yes. The bedroom was just as spotless as the rest of the place. A low platform bed, no dirty laundry in sight, everything folded or stored. I noticed this weird digital clock on the nightstand. It glowed faintly blue but was hard to read. I didn't ask about it. It wasn't important. I slept better than I expected. The bed was firm but not too hard, and the apartment stayed quiet the whole night. No traffic noises, no neighbors banging around. In the morning, I found him already in the kitchen, dressed in a plain gray t-shirt and sweatpants. He handed me a mug of coffee without saying anything. It wasn't too strong, which I liked. I used his bathroom quickly, checked that I had everything, and said I'd text him after work. When I stepped outside, the air was cool and the streets were still damp from an early rain. I didn't think twice about the night before. Everything had gone smoothly. He was respectful, his place was clean, and the morning coffee thing made it feel like maybe this was something serious, something stable. I had no reason to feel uneasy. Nothing had seemed wrong. But now, thinking back on it, I keep going over the way everything in his apartment was just a little too perfect. Nothing out of place, no personal items, no books, no family photos, no random stuff people usually leave lying around. I just didn't notice it then. Still, that morning, I walked out of his building feeling confident. Like maybe I'd finally found someone worth the time. A few days later, I stayed over at Mark's place again. Everything felt the same. Clean, quiet, even too perfect. But that night, something started to bother me. That same strange light from the clock on his nightstand was still glowing faintly. It didn't seem like a normal clock glow. It was dim, almost like it was hidden on purpose. When he stepped into the bathroom, I got up and took a closer look. At first, it just looked like a regular LED panel. But then I saw it. Right in the center, behind the plastic, a small round lens, all not like a sensor for alarms or anything. It was a lens, like from a camera. My fingers started shaking. I didn't touch it, just leaned in closer and stared. I didn't know much about tech stuff, but it definitely didn't belong in a clock. When he came out of the bathroom, I straightened up and acted like I was just looking at the decor. "This is a cool lamp," I said, pointing to the opposite side of the room to shift the attention. He nodded and said something about how he liked modern lighting. Later, when he went into the kitchen to pour more wine, I grabbed my phone and quickly snapped a photo of the clock. I didn't use flash, didn't want him to hear anything. That night, I couldn't fall asleep easily. I kept my back turned to the clock and pulled the blanket up to my chin. I left as early as I could the next morning, saying I had a surprise early client. Once I got home, I zoomed in on the photo and searched online using reverse image tools and keywords like clock hidden camera and spy camera nightstand. Within minutes, I found the exact model. It was a hidden surveillance camera with live stream capability. You could control it remotely. It recorded both video and audio. My mouth went dry. I just sat there, staring at the screen, reading product reviews and tech specs. My hands started trembling, and I kept thinking back to the first night I stayed over. I didn't change in front of it, but still. How long had he been recording? Was it the only one? I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to believe it, but the facts were right there in front of me. That wasn't a clock. That was a camera, and it had a clear view of the bed. I texted him that evening. I tried to sound calm, said I noticed the cool clock, and asked where he got it. He responded quickly. "It's part of a security system," he wrote. "For break-ins. It's just a precaution. Nothing weird." I told him I didn't feel comfortable with it. He sent another long message, trying to sound reassuring, saying he lived alone and liked to feel safe. That he had one in the living room too. The more he tried to explain, the more uncomfortable I felt. Nothing added up. Who installs surveillance in their own bedroom for break-ins? The next day, I talked to a friend from the salon. I told her something felt off, without going into full detail. That's when she sent me a link to a private forum, invitation only. It was a thread where people, mostly women, were sharing experiences about hidden cams, tracking devices, and people secretly uploading footage. I clicked through a few pages, and my stomach dropped. Someone had posted a blurry screenshot from a bedroom that looked nearly identical to Mark's. Same wall poster, same nightstand lamp. No names were mentioned, but my hands clenched around my phone. I couldn't think clearly after that. I called a legal hotline to ask what rights I had. They told me recording someone without consent, especially in private settings like a bedroom, was illegal. They advised me to save everything. Screenshots, messages, photos. I went through all our chats, copied them, backed up the photos. That night I didn't sleep much. Every sound in my own apartment made me jump. The idea that someone could have been watching me during one of the most private moments in my life made my skin crawl. The next day, I met with a lawyer. He confirmed what I feared. If that was a recording device, and if he shared anything online, it was a criminal offense. He suggested I go to the police with everything. I told a couple more friends, and they agreed. No waiting. No second chances. I printed everything. The messages, forum link, camera model info, the photo I took. I put it all in a folder and went to the police station. At first, the officer at the desk just nodded. But when I mentioned the hidden camera and showed the picture, he brought in someone from investigations. They took it seriously. One of the detectives pulled me aside and said there had been similar complaints in the past few months. Similar descriptions. A guy who invited women over and had strange surveillance setups in the apartment. No one had pressed charges yet. But my evidence changed things. They scheduled follow-ups, and I gave a full statement. I told them how I found the lens, what he said when I asked, and what I saw online. The detective looked tense. He said they'd open a case immediately. A few weeks later, I got a call. Mark had been arrested. During the search of his apartment, they found multiple recording devices, some disguised as smoke detectors, others as wall plugs. There was a server too, full of video files. He wasn't just recording, he was streaming them. They didn't tell me how many women were involved, but I was one of several. They said he had been doing it for years, changing usernames and hiding behind encrypted forums. Some videos had been traded in closed groups. I felt sick. My name, face, body, possibly shown to strangers without me ever knowing. But I wasn't quiet about it. I kept showing up for statements, kept pushing the case. He's facing charges now, real ones, for invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, distribution of intimate content. I still double-check everything now. Every Airbnb, every hotel, even my own apartment. I check the mirrors, the smoke detectors, even the clocks. I don't trust anyone the same way anymore. I learned the hard way that danger doesn't always look like danger. But I spoke up. I reacted in time. And I made sure he won't be able to do it to anyone else. At least not for a long time. I met her when we were organizing a charity event at the city clinic. She worked there as a nurse. Practical, soft-spoken, always quick to help. The kind of person patients trusted right away. She had this calm energy, and within a few weeks, we clicked. After long shifts, she'd offer me a ride home, and we'd talk about work, life, small things. It wasn't forced. She just made things easy. One day, during a break, she told me about a guy she'd met while waiting in line at the pharmacy window. She said he struck up a conversation about some over-the-counter allergy meds. Nothing unusual. But before she walked away, he handed her a tiny keychain, some cheap plastic charm shaped like a 4-leaf clover. Said something cheesy like, "Little things like this bring luck." She laughed, thanked him, and kept it. It sounded harmless, and she didn't think much of it. Just a random, odd, but kind interaction. But a few days later, he messaged her. Said he got her number from a colleague in the pharmacy who owed him a favor. She didn't ask many questions, just figured it was a coincidence and maybe a bit bold. Still, she replied. He seemed nice, respectful, curious about her work. Eventually, he asked to meet for coffee. She hesitated but told me she wanted to give it a chance. People meet in strange ways, she said. What's the worst that could happen? They met on a Saturday. Simple coffee, nothing fancy. She said he was charming in person, a bit intense with compliments, but not over the top. She liked that he listened closely and remembered details. By the end of the week, they'd seen each other 3 times. He brought flowers to her workplace, waited for her outside the main entrance. Not every day, just here and there. She didn't tell many people at work. Only a few of us knew. He started texting more often. Always something sweet. Always upbeat. Can't stop thinking about you. Hope your patients treat you well today. Counting minutes till I see you. At first, she found it flattering. I did too, kind of. But within a couple of weeks, he got better at tracking her schedule. She said it like a joke. He always seems to know when I'm getting off early. But when I asked if she told him, she shrugged. He probably just remembers from the last time. It didn't stop there. He began showing up near the parking lot after her shifts. Once she found him leaning against her car, smiling, holding takeout. She didn't seem scared, just surprised. Said he called it a spontaneous dinner date. Another time, he sent her a picture of her car parked in a new spot behind the clinic. "Looks like you're working late today," he texted. She laughed it off, told me he was just being playful. I started to get a weird feeling about it. I told her it might be good to set some boundaries, just in case. She brushed it off, said he was just excited, a little awkward, maybe too eager but harmless. "It's been a long time since someone cared this much," she said. And I got that. It's easy to mistake attention for care when you're tired, working non-stop and lonely. Then he began asking more questions. "Who were you with last night? Why didn't you answer my call? Why did it take 6 minutes to respond?" It started small, just curious sounding. But over time, his tone changed. If she didn't text back quickly, he'd follow up with, "Are you with someone else?" Or, "Is it so hard to just let me know you're okay?" She told me it bothered her, but she still believed he meant well, that he just had trust issues. I didn't push, but I warned her gently. "This sounds like the start of something controlling." She nodded, but I could see she wasn't ready to hear it. Things really shifted the night of my birthday. A small group of us went to a quiet bar. Not a big party, just drinks, music, some laughs. She showed up a bit late, sat beside me, and whispered she hadn't told him she was coming. "He wouldn't get it," she said. Half an hour later, he walked in. Just appeared at the door, scanned the room, saw us. I watched his whole expression change. He came over without saying hi to anyone else. Stood beside her, close. "You didn't answer my calls," he said. She told him she was out with friends, that it wasn't a big deal. He leaned down, voice low but sharp, and said, "You're supposed to celebrate with people who matter." Then he looked at me and the others, like we were intruders. Without waiting for her reply, he turned and left. Slammed the door so hard it knocked over a chair near the entrance. She apologized, looked embarrassed, tried to make excuses. "He's just upset. He thought we'd do something together tonight." But I noticed she kept checking her phone afterward, over and over. Even when she smiled, her eyes didn't stay on any of us for long. She stayed till the end, but her hand never left her phone screen. After a while, she started complaining more often. Said he was messaging constantly, checking in every hour, sometimes every few minutes. Always asking where she was, what she was doing, who she was with. If she didn't reply fast enough, he'd call. If she missed that, he'd show up at the clinic, pretending he was just passing by. One day, a male coworker walked her to her car, just being polite. And that's when it exploded. He came out of nowhere, yelling across the lot, loud enough for people to stop and look. Called her a liar. Asked if she was cheating. The guy who walked her looked confused, didn't even know what was happening. She tried to calm him down, told him they were just co-workers. But his face, it wasn't the same anymore. That charm from the pharmacy line was gone. Now it was tight, twisted, bitter. His eyes didn't blink much, just stared. Later, she said he apologized, told her he was scared of losing her. "I've been left before," he said. "I'm just trying to protect us." She wanted to believe him. She thought if she explained things better, if she was more careful, it would stop. I told her again, "This isn't protection. This is control." I asked her to change her number, maybe talk to someone, even the police. But she still didn't think it was serious enough. Said he was just hurt, not dangerous. Things got worse when she told him about a co-worker's bachelorette party. Just a small gathering at a wine bar. He told her not to go. Said it wasn't safe, that she was just trying to get away from him. She said she needed her space, that she had a right to have friends, to have a life. That night, she went anyway. I was with her at the bar. She laughed, smiled for the first time in days. But when we walked her to her car, all 4 tires were flat. Big, deep slashes across the rubber. And on the driver's side, long scratches, almost like claws, carved into the door. No note. No one around. But we both knew. After that, her mood changed completely. She started locking her doors earlier, parked in different spots, took longer routes home, but she still didn't report him. Said it wasn't worth it unless she had proof. She wanted peace, not war. I begged her to stay with me for a while just until things calmed down. She said no. Her apartment was quiet, tucked behind some trees, with a little parking area out back. She felt safe there somehow. That night, everything changed. It was late, close to midnight, when I got the call. A neighbor of hers, frantic, said they saw a man pacing near the building entrance, hoodie up, gloves on. He wasn't ringing buzzers, just standing close to the door, watching windows. They didn't recognize him, but something felt wrong. I called her right away. No answer. About 15 minutes later, that same neighbor called again. Said they saw smoke, thin at first, then thick, pouring from a window. A few seconds later, the building's fire alarm blared. People started rushing out into the yard, shouting. Someone yelled her name. She tried to get out. I later learned she had grabbed her purse and opened the front door, only to find him right there, holding a small plastic container. Neighbors said they smelled something sharp and chemical just before the flames started. They think he lit it right there in the hallway. The fire began in the entrance, blocking her only exit. It spread fast. Somehow she forced the door open wide enough to scream. A man from the floor above came running, tried to pull her out, but the heat was already closing in. She had burns by the time he reached her. Her arms, legs, parts of her face. She collapsed outside in the yard while people sprayed her with water from a garden hose, waiting for the fire trucks. He didn't run. He was still inside when firefighters arrived. They pulled him out, half conscious, coughing, his hands burned. He wasn't trying to save himself. They said it looked like he wanted to go down with her. At the hospital, she was in critical condition. I visited as soon as they let me in. I almost didn't recognize her. Tubes, bandages, machines beeping everywhere. She couldn't speak for days. When she finally did, her voice was raw, broken. All she asked was, "Why didn't I see how far this could go?" That question hasn't left my mind since. Doctors say her recovery will be long, maybe years. She lost sensation in some fingers. Movement in her left arm is limited. Her skin will never be the same. He survived too, but he's under custody now, facing charges. Attempted murder, arson, maybe more. They're still going through the case. She's trying. I help her when I can, organizing donations, helping her apply for assistance. She's getting used to moving with help, getting used to people seeing her differently. Her spirit's still there. But the damage, it's deep. Physically, emotionally, all of it. We talk sometimes about the early days, about the keychain, about how small it started. She remembers thinking it was sweet, that someone was paying attention. But attention isn't the same as love, and obsession isn't care. I've learned that silence can be deadly, that hoping someone will change isn't a plan. When someone tries to own you, that's not love, it's a warning. I wish we'd acted sooner. I wish we'd taken every small sign seriously. But now, all we can do is help her heal. She's still here. She's fighting. And we believe, one day, she'll live without fear again. The weirdest part? I didn't even know the guy before that night. It was a Saturday, and I had just come off a long week. Late hours, spreadsheets, meetings that went nowhere. So when I got a message about a birthday party for an old classmate, I figured, why not? I didn't usually go to these things. Big groups of people wore me out, and I never really felt like I fit in with that crowd. But I hadn't been out in a while, and the idea of just laughing and doing something different sounded decent. The party was at someone's apartment, a big place on the top floor with a little rooftop balcony. Loud music, people already tipsy by the time I arrived. I recognized a few faces from university, said my hellos, grabbed a drink I barely touched, and parked myself near the bookshelf pretending to be interested in the titles. That's where Mark found me. Tall, dark t-shirt, decent haircut. He smiled and asked if I was with the birthday group or just crashing for free drinks. That was the kind of line you hear a lot at these things, but he delivered it with a sort of polite tone, like he was genuinely trying to start a normal conversation. I told him we'd probably both taken classes with the birthday guy, and then we just started chatting. He asked where I worked, what I did on weekends, what kind of movies I liked. It didn't feel like flirting exactly, just questions. He leaned in a little close, but nothing too strange. Maybe just a guy trying to get to know someone at a party. I noticed he didn't talk much about himself, though. Just kept asking about me. Still, I didn't think anything of it. People get curious. And sometimes, when you've had a beer or two, small talk goes a little deeper than usual. We ended up in a group playing board games in the living room. It got noisy, lots of laughter, someone spilled wine, and we all shifted to dancing in the kitchen because the host's Bluetooth speaker wouldn't connect in the living room. Mark stuck nearby the whole time, but I wasn't bothered. I figured he was just being friendly. Toward the end of the night, people were saying their goodbyes, shoes were getting found from under couches, and someone started cleaning up bottles. Mark said he had some funny pictures of everyone playing charades and asked if he could send them to me. He held out his phone and asked for my number. I hesitated for half a second, then gave it. I'd done the same with people at work before, just to swap photos or follow up on something. It didn't feel like a big deal. The next day, around noon, I got a text from him. No photo. Just, "Hey, you want to grab a coffee or walk around the mall later today?" I read it and didn't answer right away. I had laundry to do, groceries to pick up, and a few emails to get through before Monday. A few hours later, I replied politely, "Hey, I'm a bit busy today. Maybe another time." About 20 minutes after that, another message came in. "When would be a good time for you then? I'm usually free in the evenings." I didn't answer that one. 2 hours later. "Even if it's just 20 minutes, I don't mind driving." That's when I started to feel like something was off. I hadn't said yes, and I wasn't planning to. He barely knew me. We had talked for maybe 40 minutes in total. That evening, I met my friend Anna at a cafe we liked. Small place on the corner, lots of windows and quiet music. We were halfway through our coffees and talking about her new apartment when I glanced toward the counter and saw him. Mark. Standing there in line, looking at the menu like he just happened to wander in. But his eyes kept sliding over toward our table. He didn't smile or wave, just stood there. I told myself it was a coincidence. The town wasn't that big, and the cafe was popular. Maybe he really just needed a caffeine fix. I didn't say anything to Anna. We kept talking, but I was distracted now, watching him out of the corner of my eye. He ordered a tea, sat down at a table behind us, didn't even pull out his phone. Just sat there, facing the front, occasionally glancing over. We finished up and headed out. I didn't look back to check if he was still there. It was cold, the wind had picked up, and we both headed toward the parking lot behind the building. Anna's car was parked closer, so we said goodbye quickly, and she drove off. I walked alone the last 40 meters to my car. Halfway there, I heard footsteps behind me. Not running, just steady. I looked over my shoulder and saw Mark. "Hey," he said casually. "Didn't know you were here." I didn't answer right away. "Yeah, just catching up with a friend." "Oh, nice," he said, stepping a bit closer. "Need a ride?" I shook my head. "No, I've got my car." He nodded, stuck his hands in his pockets, looked like he was about to say something else but didn't. I opened my door, tossed my bag inside. "Well, see you," I said, and forced a small wave. He gave a short wave back but didn't move. Just stood there watching as I got in and shut the door. 2 days later, I stepped outside during my lunch break and saw him standing across the street from my office building. Hoodie, hands in his pockets, pretending to scroll through his phone. The second he noticed me, he walked over like it was all a coincidence. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, smiling. "You heading to lunch?" I forced a neutral look. "Yeah, just grabbing something quick." "Oh, mind if I join?" I hesitated, then said, "Actually, I have some calls to make." He didn't move. "We could just walk a bit. I won't bother you long." "I really need to go," I said, and turned toward the deli near the corner. I didn't look back. From that day on, it kept happening. Not every single day, but often enough that I noticed. He'd be standing near the bus stop by my building, or leaning against the railing by the cafe down the block. Always just passing by. Always trying to make small talk. I kept making excuses. Maybe he didn't know how to meet people. Maybe he just really liked me and wasn't trying to be weird. But the excuses got harder to believe. Then I started noticing him near my apartment. First time, I was coming back from a run, and he was across the street in joggers and a hoodie, pretending to tie his shoe. He waved. "Didn't know you lived around here?" Second time, I was on my balcony watering plants, and he walked by with a dog I'd never seen before. Looked up, smiled, kept walking. The same dog never appeared again. I locked my social media accounts, but he kept liking every post I made before I changed the settings. Even old photos. He commented things like, "That beach spot looks amazing. Was it last Saturday?" Or, "I saw this building on my way home yesterday. Funny how we cross paths." My stories? Viewed within seconds, sometimes twice. My friends started to notice too. One of them, Leo, asked, "What's up with that guy from the party? I saw him near your office, then again at the grocery store. Isn't that weird?" I said I didn't know what to think. I wanted to believe it was just poor social skills, that maybe I was reading too much into it. But inside, I knew I wasn't. He wasn't just showing up randomly. He was tracking where I was. And worse, he wanted me to notice. The real turning point was when I visited my parents. They live in a quiet area outside the city, long driveway, no reason for strangers to be around. It was evening, just starting to get dark, and I pulled up to the gate like always. That's when I saw a car parked a little down the street, tucked behind some bushes like it was trying not to be seen. It looked just like his car. I got out and walked slowly toward the gate, then glanced back. I could see the side mirror reflecting the dim light from the street lamp. I kept walking, trying not to panic. But when I looked again, this time through the front windshield, I saw him. Mark. Leaning just slightly back in the driver's seat, face partially hidden behind the headrest. But it was him. He saw me see him. He didn't get out. Didn't wave. Just stayed there like he thought I wouldn't do anything. I turned around, walked straight back to my car, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking. I sent a message to my friend Sophia right away. "He's outside my parents' house, sitting in his car. I don't know what to do." She called immediately. "Call the police. Now. Don't wait." I did. The dispatcher told me to stay calm and report exactly what was happening. I told them I knew the man, that he'd been following me, showing up at places without reason. They said they needed me to come in, file a report, bring any proof I had. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up in bed staring at my phone. Every sound outside made me freeze. I checked my locks twice. I pulled the curtain back just enough to look outside every 15 minutes. The car was gone after about an hour. But I didn't relax. Next morning, I took a cab to the police station. I brought everything I had, screenshots of our texts, The ones where he asked about my work and mentioned seeing me in certain places. His comments on my posts. I also printed out timestamps, photos, and chat logs. My friend Leo wrote a statement saying he saw Mark near my office multiple times. Sophia confirmed the cafe incident. The officers listened carefully. They said they couldn't arrest him yet, but that it met the criteria for stalking. They'd contact him for a formal warning. If he contacted me again or showed up anywhere, I had to call immediately. That same afternoon, his social media went dark. Every profile, gone. No more likes, no more comments. I stopped seeing his face on the street. No texts, no calls, nothing. They told me if he came back or escalated, I could press charges and request a restraining order. But for now, all they could do was make sure he knew the law was watching. A week passed, then another. Still no sign of him. His car didn't show up again. No one saw him outside my work or near my building. I started walking outside without checking over my shoulder every 5 seconds. I changed my routine anyway. Different routes, new grocery store, no predictable habits. I wasn't fine, not completely. But I could breathe again. It stuck with me though. How normal it all seemed at first. Just a guy being friendly at a party. And how fast it turned. How someone can cross the line without ever raising their voice or breaking the law. I used to think I could tell when someone was dangerous. Now I'm not so sure. It made me more careful. About who I talk to, who gets my number, who I let in. Because now I know. Sometimes, it only takes one polite conversation for someone to decide they're entitled to your life. One of the dumbest things I ever agreed to was playing hide and seek in a half-finished building with no lights, no safety rails, and God knows how many open holes in the floors. But at the time, it didn't seem like a bad idea at all. It actually started at a birthday party a few weeks before that. Just a regular thing we did out by the lake. It's always hot where I live, like oven hot. So every weekend we'd either hit the water or throw some kind of cookout. That time it was a barbecue for a friend of mine turning 23, and it had all the usual stuff. Cheap beer, folding chairs, someone trying to fix a speaker that kept cutting out. I met her standing by the cooler, talking to some guy about her trip to Chile. I wasn't really trying to get in the conversation, but I couldn't help listening. She had this calm, kind of confident way of talking. Said she'd hiked up some volcano, spent the night in a tent near the summit, and got caught in a windstorm so strong her tent ripped open at 3 a.m. She laughed when she told it like it was just part of the fun. I asked her if she traveled a lot, and we ended up talking for nearly an hour. She told me about cliff diving in Greece, getting lost in the Alps, surfing in Portugal. I don't even surf, but I told her I'd always wanted to try. I didn't expect her to ask me out. But instead of a normal thing like coffee or lunch, she said, "Let's do something better. Ever been to that abandoned construction site near the train tracks?" I asked if she was serious. "It's great for hide and seek," she said, totally straight-faced. "Creepy as hell. You'll love it." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She said she'd gone there a few times with friends before. Nobody really guarded it, just a rusted gate and some plywood nailed over the old entrances. I said okay. Honestly, I wanted to impress her. I figured it'd just be a goofy little night adventure. We planned it for the next Saturday. She sent me a pin of where to park and told me to bring a flashlight. I got there just before sunset. The place looked like a ruin. Concrete skeleton of what was supposed to be a factory or warehouse or something. Rows of empty window frames, weeds growing through cracks in the ground, and piles of rebar lying around like rusted bones. I parked a little off the road, killed the lights, and saw her already waiting at the corner of the fence, dressed in old sneakers and a black hoodie. small backpack slung over one shoulder. She grinned like it was nothing. Ready? We found a spot where the fence had been bent back just enough to squeeze through. I followed her lead, ducking under the twisted wire. The air inside was still and heavy, like it hadn't moved in years. Some of the windows were covered in black plastic flapping in the wind. A few broken stairs led up to what looked like the second floor, but most of the building was open ground level. We moved fast, keeping low whenever we heard a car pass in the distance. I asked if anyone ever patrolled here, and she just shook her head. "Only rats and raccoons," she said. The deeper we went, the worse it looked. Metal rods stuck out from walls like spikes. Shattered glass crunched under our shoes. Some of the rooms had graffiti everywhere. Strange faces, random dates, a few things that looked like gang tags. The ceilings in some parts were half collapsed. A few spots smelled like piss and burnt rubber. But she didn't slow down. She kept laughing, teasing me for stepping too carefully. "You really this jumpy?" she asked, shining her flashlight into a hole in the floor. I didn't answer. I wasn't scared exactly, just alert. I started noticing how deep some of the shadows were, how easy it'd be to get hurt in here. Or stuck. I looked around and realized I couldn't see the way we came in. "Let's do 2-minute rounds," she said, suddenly serious. "You count, I hide first." She didn't wait for my answer, just clicked off her light and jogged off into one of the side corridors. I counted out loud to 60, then gave up and started looking. My beam cut through the dust in the air, catching glimpses of broken drywall and metal scraps. Everything echoed. A single step sounded like a dozen. At first, it was kind of funny, like a kid's game. I peeked around corners, under rusted staircases, behind old barrels. Nothing. I called out once but got no reply. Then I heard something. Light footsteps. Quick, off to my left. I turned and saw just a flash of movement disappearing behind a thick concrete pillar. I took off after it, careful not to trip. The corridor got narrower, walls closer together, ceiling lower. I followed her deeper into the building, but the light started catching strange details now. Empty cans, burnt cloth. A shopping cart tipped on its side with a torn bag inside. I paused at one of the rooms to scan it better, then heard her laugh echo from the next hallway. It sounded too far for the time it took me to get here. I moved faster. The floor felt less stable, covered in a layer of grit and dust that made it hard to keep my footing. I passed another open doorway, saw what looked like the remains of a small campfire. Someone had definitely been here, and not too long ago. I wondered how she'd been here before and never mentioned that. Then I saw her again, just her shadow this time, darting behind a column up ahead. I called out, "All right, I saw you. Game over." No answer. I picked up the pace. The corridor turned sharply left and opened into a larger room with no roof. Light from the moon spilled in, making it easier to see. I stepped in slowly, flashlight sweeping from side to side. She wasn't there. Just a rusted pipe in the middle, a few bricks stacked in the corner, and something else. Movement on the far end, near another doorway. I crossed the room fast, ready to catch her and end the game. I turned the corner. The hallway was pitch black. I raised the flashlight. There was a sound, quick scraping, like a shoe scuffing against concrete. I stepped into the dark corridor and aimed the light ahead. Just as I caught a glimpse of her silhouette turning a corner at the far end, the floor under me shifted. I didn't notice right away, but when I reached the edge of the stairwell, something felt off. She was gone again, vanished into the shadows. I leaned forward, trying to follow, and that's when it happened. There was a loud crack beneath me. I looked down just in time to see the rotted wood under my foot split apart. I didn't even have a chance to react. The board had been holding up part of the narrow platform leading to the second floor, and it gave way completely. My leg punched through the opening first, then the rest of me fell with it. I dropped hard, straight down, maybe 8 or 9 feet. The impact shot pain through both my legs so sharp it knocked the wind out of me. I screamed without thinking. It was like someone took a sledgehammer to my knees. My flashlight flew out of my hand and landed somewhere off to the right, flickering weakly and lighting up just a piece of the massive empty space around me. I rolled onto my side, gritting my teeth. I tried moving one leg. Nothing. The other one responded, but just barely. Any slight motion sent a white-hot stab of pain up through my hips. My first thought was to call her, see if she could help. Maybe she hadn't realized I fell. I shouted her name. Nothing. I yelled again, louder, my voice echoing off the walls. Still no answer, just the distant sound of wind slipping through broken windows and metal beams. I waited, hoping I'd hear footsteps, see her light coming back, but there was nothing. I kept calling, my voice getting raw, but she didn't come back. That's when I started to panic. I couldn't stand. I could barely move. The concrete floor was cold under my back, and the pain made it hard to breathe in more than shallow gasps. I tried to drag myself toward where I saw the flashlight land, but even reaching out my arm pulled on my legs in a way that made my stomach twist. My head spun, and for a second everything went black. When I came to again, the light had died. I was alone in complete darkness. I don't know how long I laid there. Maybe hours, maybe more. Time didn't feel real. At some point, I tried to reach into my pocket for my phone. My hand got there eventually, but the screen was shattered. The device bent at an angle. It wouldn't turn on. I think it hit the floor hard enough to kill it completely. I called out a few more times, but my voice was barely more than a whisper now. I started to understand. She wasn't coming back. Whether she panicked or just didn't care, she'd left me here. Maybe she thought I'd catch up. Maybe she assumed I'd gone home. Or maybe she didn't want to deal with whatever trouble came with someone getting hurt in a place like this. I couldn't think straight. I was thirsty. So thirsty. My lips cracked. My throat burned. I tried crawling, inch by inch, toward a patch of wall that looked like it had a hole in it. I thought maybe it led to the outside, or at least closer to where someone might hear me. Every movement sent pain through my body like someone was cutting me open. I couldn't believe this was happening. Hours ago, I was joking with a girl by a lake. Now I was dragging myself across broken concrete with useless legs, praying someone would find me before I bled out or passed out for good. The worst part was the silence. Not even rats or birds. Just me and that dead, still air. I lost track of how many times I blacked out. I'd wake up freezing, coated in sweat, then slip under again. Between those moments, my brain flashed random memories, laughing with my friends, smoking behind the auto shop after work, the way my mom always left a bottle of water in the fridge with my name on it. I kept thinking about those stupid decisions, how fast it all went sideways. I didn't even really know her. Not really. But I followed her here. Let her lead me like it was some game. I thought about dying there more than once. About how nobody knew where I was. About how stupid my friends would feel when they realized I was missing. I don't remember the exact moment I heard voices, but I know it was after a full day had passed. It had to be. My throat was dry like sandpaper, my head pounding like a drum. I heard laughter first. Teenagers. They were messing around, shouting, clanging something metal against a wall. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. Then I heard one of them yell, "Hey, did you hear that?" A flashlight beam swept across the floor and hit my shoe. I've never been so relieved to see a bunch of dumb kids in my life. They ran over, all talking at once, trying to figure out what to do. One of them had signal and called emergency services. I remember being half awake when the paramedics got there. They put a neck brace on me, slid me onto a stretcher, and carried me out into the daylight. At the hospital, the doctors told me I had multiple fractures in both legs. One tibia was completely shattered. They said I was lucky I hadn't damaged my spine or hit my head. Surgery, screws, months of rehab. I was out of work, out of everything. The police asked me what happened. I told them everything. About the girl, the game, how she disappeared. They said they'd look into it, but there was nothing to go on. I didn't even know her last name. No photos, no phone number saved. Just her first name and a memory of a smile in the dark. They didn't find any signs she'd ever been there. Now I'm walking again, kind of. Still limp when it's cold. Can't stand too long. I don't go out much. Friends stopped asking about her after a while. I still think about that night, though. Not every day, but enough. Maybe she got scared. Maybe she just didn't care. Either way, I was the one left in the dark. I worked in a big office building downtown, one of those glass towers where every floor looks the same and you never see natural light unless you stand right by the window. My days were long. Calls, emails, meetings that could have been emails. By the time I got home, all I wanted was to eat something quick, scroll through my phone, and fall asleep. That routine went on for months. Eventually, I realized I hadn't been on a date in almost a year. My friends were either married or halfway there, and I was just stuck. So, I decided to try dating apps, thinking at least it would be something different. That's how I started talking to Steve. He messaged me first. His profile didn't have anything flashy, just a few photos, mostly close-ups, and one of him holding a circuit board or some tech thing. Said he was into electronics. His messages stood out. He didn't use cheesy lines. He asked real questions, joked in a subtle, dry way, and never let the conversation drop. We started chatting regularly, at lunch, after work, sometimes even during meetings when I was bored and hiding my phone under the desk. Over the weeks, I learned a lot about him. He lived in a house outside the city, said he preferred space and quiet. Sent photos sometimes, his tools, his dog, a sleepy-looking retriever, even what he was cooking. He said he worked freelance, mostly from home. I liked how he didn't try to impress with money or fake charm. He seemed real. I told him about my office, my annoying manager, the vending machine that never worked. He always replied fast, even if it was just a meme or a random joke. After a while, it felt like we had something. I'd catch myself smiling at his messages. We talked about meeting up a few times, but he always had a reason not to. He was fixing something, visiting a relative, once he said his car broke down. I asked once about a video call, just to hear his voice or see him move. He said his webcam was broken. Another time, he said he looked awful that day. I didn't push it. I figured maybe he was shy or just not comfortable yet. It didn't seem like a red flag back then. Then last Thursday, he finally suggested meeting. He picked a place, a cafe that had just opened, all minimal design and overpriced drinks. He said 6 p.m. Friday. I was nervous. It was weird being nervous over someone I hadn't even seen live, but it felt like I knew him already. I left work early, went home to change, put on a dark green dress I hadn't worn in a while, did my makeup properly. It was still light out when I left, sun hitting the tops of the buildings, everything gold and clean. I got there 5 minutes early. I waited at a small table near the window. The waiter came by. I ordered a water. I kept checking the door, expecting someone around 5'10", Short brown hair like in his photos, maybe a backpack or something casual. But then a man walked up to me, tall, older than I expected, maybe late 30s, short cropped blonde hair, wearing a gray sweater and jeans. He looked like he belonged in a co-working space, not on a date. He paused in front of my table, smiled like he knew me. "You're Anna?" he asked. I nodded, confused. "Steve's feeling a bit under the weather," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "He asked me to come instead, just to keep you company, explain the situation." I blinked. Wait, why wouldn't he just text me? He gave a small shrug. He didn't want to bail on you completely. Thought it'd be better than leaving you waiting. It was too casual, like this was normal. I stared at him, unsure what to say. He leaned back, like he was settling in. "We're close," he added. "Known each other for years." I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to stand up and leave, but I didn't want to overreact either. Maybe Steve really was sick. Maybe this was awkward, but well-intentioned. So I stayed. The guy introduced himself as Matt. He talked easily, like this wasn't strange at all. Said Steve had been looking forward to this, but came down with something last minute. Promised Steve would reach out directly soon. Something about it didn't sit right. I asked again, "Why didn't Steve message me himself?" Matt laughed lightly, waved it off. He was half asleep when I left. I told him I'd come say hi, smooth things over. He wasn't nervous. That bothered me. He seemed too comfortable, too prepared. His phone buzzed once. He glanced at it, put it face down. I tried to steer the conversation back to Steve, what he was sick with, when he started feeling bad. But Matt dodged most of it, said, "Probably just something he ate," and moved on, moved. The whole time I kept thinking, why would someone send a friend to a first date? Why wouldn't he at least call or text? I said, "It's just weird. I mean, I don't even know you." He leaned in slightly, hands folded. "I get it. You're right to be cautious. But Steve really wanted to meet you. He talks about you all the time. Said you were smart, funny, all that." It sounded rehearsed, like he was reading from a script. I glanced at the door again, half hoping Steve would suddenly walk in, say it was all a joke, but nothing. Just people coming and going, waiters clearing plates. I felt stuck. I didn't want to be rude, but none of this felt right. I checked my phone under the table, no new messages. I thought about making an excuse, saying I had to leave. Matt noticed. "Hey, don't worry," he said. "This is just temporary. Steve will make it up to you." I nodded, but I didn't believe it. My water sat untouched. I could feel my pulse in my neck, fast. I told myself to give it 5 more minutes, just enough time to see if anything would make sense. Then I asked again, "So, why didn't he tell me this earlier today?" Matt looked away briefly, then smiled like I'd asked something silly. "He thought you might cancel." That was the moment I realized I should have left already. But instead, I said, "Okay, then explain something to me." "Okay, then explain something to me," I said, leaning forward. Matt's eyes shifted just a little. Not nervous, but like he was calculating. I didn't wait for his answer. I said, "Let's just call him. Put him on speaker, 2 seconds." He raised a hand like he was calming me down. "He's really not in good shape right now. Laid out in bed, said he was barely staying awake." I stared at him. "So what? He can't say one word?" Matt hesitated, then chuckled, but it felt fake. "Come on, don't make this weirder than it is. He'll reach out." I said nothing, just kept looking at him. He leaned in again like he was sharing something private. "I get why you're upset, but really, this is just bad timing. You'll laugh about this later. I didn't laugh. I asked, got any photo of him right now? Like, if he's sick, maybe he sent you something? Matt looked down at the table. His phone's dead. Died earlier today. Didn't have time to charge it. So he didn't call me. Didn't text. And now he's unconscious and has no phone. Matt opened his mouth like he had a reply, but then just shrugged. It's just a bad day. Something clicked then. He didn't know enough. When I mentioned my job earlier, he looked confused. I asked about the bar where Steve said he went last weekend. He blinked, guessed a different name. Dates didn't line up. And when I said something about Steve's dog, he looked surprised and said, "Oh yeah, the lab, right?" It wasn't a lab. That was it for me. I stood up and said, "Sorry, I have to take a call," grabbing my bag without waiting for a response. He asked, "Want me to wait?" I shook my head and walked out. Once I hit the sidewalk, I didn't stop. My chest was tight, but I walked fast, took the corner without looking back. Only when I was halfway down the block did I slow down and pull out my phone. Still no messages, no calls. I felt stupid, like I just sat through a staged play and was the only one who didn't know it was fake. I went home without eating. Got inside, locked the door, dropped my bag on the floor, and opened the chat with Steve. Nothing new. Not even a "sorry I missed you." I scrolled back, reading through the older messages, looking for something I missed. But the tone was consistent, warm, casual, like a guy slowly getting to know you. Only now I realized he never sent a voice message. Not one. Not even a short clip. Just text and pictures. I clicked on one of the earlier photos, the one where he was sitting in his garage, holding a soldering tool. I saved it, dragged it into an image search. It took less than 5 seconds to find the original. Same photo, different name. An account on a tech forum, dated 2 years ago, posted by someone named Ryan from Michigan. I searched another one, the dog photo. That was on a Pinterest board of golden retrievers. The Steve I knew didn't exist. I sat there feeling cold, trying to process what this meant. I checked his profile again on the dating app. Still active, still showing online recently. No bio change. I reported it, but that felt useless. Then I started searching forums. Keywords like dating app fake profile friend shows up. I didn't expect to find anything, but after 20 minutes, I found a thread. It described exactly what happened to me. A user said she matched with a guy who chatted for months, then flaked on their meeting and sent a friend instead. She stayed, like I did, and halfway through the conversation, the friend started asking about money, jokingly, asking if she'd ever lend someone cash. She got uncomfortable and left. Others in the thread shared similar experiences. Sometimes the friend would steer the conversation towards sensitive topics, asking things like, "What bank do you use?" or "Do you usually carry cash?" All while pretending to talk about normal stuff. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just awkward. This was a setup. These people weren't trying to flirt. They were fishing for something. I pulled up every photo Steve had sent me and ran reverse image searches. At least 4 were pulled from random sites, forums, blog posts, even one from a local newspaper article about a home renovation. All fake. Every one. And Matt, whoever he really was, he knew what he was doing. He came to that cafe like it was part of a routine, said the right things, stayed just inside the line of what seemed acceptable. But he messed up on the details. He got lazy. That's what saved me. The next morning, after barely sleeping, I made up my mind. I printed the whole chat history, saved the photos, grabbed my laptop, and went to the local police station. It was quiet, a few people in line, a tired-looking officer at the front desk. I told him I wanted to report something, maybe a fraud attempt. He took me to a desk in the back and listened while I explained. He didn't act surprised. He nodded like he'd heard it before. "You're not the first," he said. "There's been a few similar reports. They don't always go the same way, but the pattern's there. They lure people out, then either try to get information or, in some cases, money." I handed him the photos and printouts. He said someone from the cybercrime unit would follow up. 2 days later, I got a call. A female officer told me they traced the profile and linked it to an ongoing case involving a small group running romance scams. Sometimes it ended with just awkward meetings. Other times, things escalated. One case involved stolen credit cards, another involved threats when someone refused to give personal info. She said, "You got lucky. Walking out probably saved you from something worse." I thanked her, hung up, and sat still for a long time. It was embarrassing. I thought I was smart about people. I thought I could tell when someone was real. But I'd fallen for a script, for a fake smile and a stolen photo of someone else's life. All those months of chatting, planning, thinking I was building something, none of it was real. Now I don't meet anyone without a video call first. No exceptions. And if someone's too good at messaging but always finds a reason to avoid showing their face, I'm done. It's not about being paranoid. It's just knowing better. I met Jake on a dating app I downloaded out of boredom after a long shift at the coffee shop. I wasn't really expecting anything from it, just passing time between work and sleep. But Jake stood out. He messaged first, and instead of the usual boring lines, he joked about how his cooking could win awards for best attempt at poisoning. It made me laugh. We started chatting more, mostly about movies, his dog who apparently hated everyone except him, and this house his parents owned in the suburbs with an attic loft he always talked about. He seemed friendly, a little awkward, but not in a bad way. He said he liked quiet things, books, long walks, that sort of stuff. It felt normal, safe. After a few weeks of back and forth, he invited me over for dinner. At first I wasn't sure. I barely knew him. But we'd talked enough that I didn't get any weird vibes, and curiosity got the better of me. I said yes. His place was about 40 minutes outside the city, in one of those quiet suburban streets where all the houses have matching mailboxes and overwatered lawns. I took the train and walked the last few blocks. The house looked like something from a home magazine. Small front porch, clean white siding, tidy little lawn, and a beat-up old pickup parked by the fence. He came out to meet me before I even got to the door, waving like I was someone he'd known for years. Inside, it smelled like garlic and tomatoes. He'd cooked pasta, and the table was already set when I walked in. Small lamps were lit in the corners of the living room, not too bright, just soft light bouncing off the pale walls. Everything looked neat, almost too neat, but I pushed the thought aside. He joked about his cooking again and told me to rate his pasta honestly, or he'd have to revoke my dessert privileges. It was fine. Good even. We talked through most of the meal, movies, favorite songs, that kind of stuff. I kept reminding myself it was just a normal night. Just two people having dinner. But even while he was laughing and telling stories, I started noticing little things. He was too polite. Like every move felt rehearsed. Refilling my glass the second it was low, clearing my plate before I'd even put my fork down. He kept asking if I was comfortable, if the chair was okay, if the room was too cold. It wasn't creepy exactly, just off. Like he was trying to act like someone he wasn't. After we finished eating, we moved to the couch with some wine. We started talking about random things. I told him about my neighbors who always blast reggaeton at 2 a.m., and he laughed, saying he was lucky the houses around here were quiet. He mentioned a recent trip to the coast, how he went alone to clear his head. Then he added, almost like he wanted to be sure I caught it, that he lived alone now. Said it a few times. "No one else here," he said, almost proudly, like that meant something more than it should have. I nodded, smiled politely, and tried not to overthink it. But I started picking up on more odd details. He kept glancing toward a door near the back of the house. It was painted the same color as the wall, almost like he didn't want it to stand out. It led downstairs, I guessed. Maybe a basement. He never looked at it directly, just flicked his eyes that way every so often, like he was checking something. Then, mid-conversation, a dull thud echoed from beneath the floor. It wasn't loud, more like something heavy had been dropped. Jake froze. Completely. He was mid-sentence, and just stopped talking. His face went blank for half a second. Then he forced a smile so wide and stiff it almost looked painful. "Old pipes," he said, waving his hand like it was nothing. "House makes weird noises sometimes." I didn't answer right away. I just nodded. It could have been anything, really. Pipes. Maybe a furnace kicking in. But the way he said it, how quickly he tried to dismiss it, it didn't feel right. There was a tightness in the air after that. I tried to focus on what he was saying, but I couldn't stop thinking about the sound. It hadn't come from the walls. It came from below us. Trying to shake off the tension, I said I could use some coffee. I got up and walked toward the kitchen, hoping movement would break the weird mood. He stood up a beat later, a little too fast, and said, "Yeah, great idea." His voice had that same forced cheer in it, like he was glad for a distraction. He followed me into the kitchen. In the kitchen, while he was pretending to look for mugs, I noticed something change in his face. He asked me something about how I liked my coffee, but his tone was off, like he was trying to remember what he was supposed to say next. His hands were slightly shaking as he opened the cabinet, not like someone who was cold, more like someone who wasn't in control anymore. I glanced around the room, trying not to look too obvious. On a nearby shelf were some books, probably meant to make the place look lived in. But when I looked closer, the spines were cracked and faded, some even water damaged. None looked like they'd actually been read. They were props. In the corner of the room, near the back door, I saw an old suitcase with a broken handle. The fabric was torn, and around it were muddy streaks like someone had dragged it through wet grass or dirt not long ago. The thud came again, this time clearer, louder, from beneath us. Jake stopped mid-pour. Coffee spilled slightly on the counter, and he muttered again, "Old pipes." But his voice wasn't convincing anymore. It sounded like a script he was sick of repeating. When I turned my head toward the door leading to the lower level, he moved fast. Not aggressive, but with purpose, blocking my view. "Don't worry about that," he said quickly, then added, "It's not something for you to check. That's not a woman's thing." His voice dropped lower, flatter, and his smile was completely gone now. I didn't argue. I just nodded, slowly stepped back, and said it was getting late, that I should really get going. The air felt heavier, the room quieter than it should have been. He didn't stop me, but I saw something in his face change. Confusion, maybe? Or like something wasn't going according to plan. His eyes moved to the door, then back to me. He said, "Sure," like he was trying to sound casual, but he was tense. His hand stayed near the edge of the counter, gripping it too tight. I grabbed my bag and made my way toward the front door as calmly as I could. He followed a few steps behind, not saying anything, just walking, watching. The second I stepped out, the cold air hit me like a reset button. I felt like I hadn't breathed right in over an hour. I didn't even wait for him to go back inside. I pulled my phone out right there on the porch and called a taxi. The signal wasn't great, but I managed to get one. He stood at the doorway for a second longer than necessary before saying, "Text me when you get home, yeah?" I nodded, lied, and said I would. As I walked down the driveway, I didn't look back. I didn't want to. I kept checking over my shoulder until the taxi arrived. The second I got in and closed the door, I told the driver to just get moving. The house disappeared in the rearview mirror, and I kept staring ahead, trying to push everything out of my head. The ride home was quiet. I sat there wondering if I was overreacting. Maybe the noise was just pipes. Maybe the suitcase was just old junk. Maybe Jake was just weird, not dangerous. But even when I got back into my apartment and locked the door behind me, the feeling didn't go away. It sat in the back of my head like something unfinished. I didn't sleep well. The next day, I told my friend about it all, every detail. She was the one who said we should look him up online, just to be sure. I didn't expect to find anything. I figured maybe a LinkedIn or some Facebook page. But instead, we found a short article in an old local news blog. His name came up linked to an ongoing investigation from about a year ago. No specifics, but the headline was enough to chill me. I didn't want to believe it was anything serious, maybe just a misunderstanding, but I couldn't shake it. Then, a day later, a news report started circulating online. Local station. A young woman had been found in a basement of a suburban home not far from where I'd been. She was hurt, alive, but shaken. She told authorities she had been held against her will for several days. They said she was discovered after a neighbor reported strange noises coming from the house at night. I didn't want to look, but I did. The name in the report was Jake's. He'd been arrested. They found evidence in the basement, not just of the most recent girl, but others. There were signs of repeated, organized efforts to isolate and control. The news didn't give every detail, but it was clear this wasn't the first time he'd done something like this. He had patterns. He knew how to hide them. I sat frozen for I don't know how long. It wasn't just some weird dinner anymore. I could have been one of them. If I had gone downstairs, if I'd stayed longer, if I hadn't listened to that feeling. My friend told me to report what I saw. Even if the police already had their case, she said it mattered to speak up, so I did. I gave a full statement. What I heard, what I saw, the suitcase, the noises. I didn't embellish anything. I didn't need to. In the end, I wasn't harmed. I got out, but it was too close. Way too close. Since then, I've changed how I approach everything. I don't ignore little things. I don't talk myself out of gut feelings. I'm more cautious. I question more. I take my time. Every morning when I leave for work, I pass by a few people smiling, waving, just being neighborly. And every time, there's a small part of me that wonders, what's behind that smile? Because now I know, sometimes it hides the worst kind of danger. And sometimes, noticing too late is the last mistake you get to make. I lived in a big city, all traffic jams and glass buildings. My days were always packed, jumping from one job to the next, checking emails and taxis, eating lunch on the go. By the time I got home, I was too tired to even speak on the phone. After a while, I downloaded a dating app, thinking maybe it'd be easier to meet someone online during my short breaks. I wasn't expecting anything serious, just a bit of distraction from the stress. That's when I met him. He had this calm, confident way of speaking. Said he was building a business in tech. Talked about his dream to travel and live abroad. Everything about him felt intentional, thought out. He wasn't pushy, but he always followed up, always replied on time. His profile was filled with hiking photos, tidy clothes, short, clean captions. I remember thinking, finally, someone normal. We started messaging during lunch, then evening calls. He wasn't just good at talking, he listened too. Like, actually listened. After about 2 weeks, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. He made a reservation at this quiet Italian place near the river. When I got there, he was already waiting outside with a small bunch of wildflowers in his hand. That detail stuck with me. Not roses, not anything expensive, just simple, thoughtful. He stood up when I arrived, pulled out my chair, ordered my drink before I even looked at the menu. Everything felt easy, like we'd known each other longer than we had. We started seeing each other once or twice a week. He always picked good spots, not flashy, but places that were hard to get into. He never forgot to open the door, to check if I got home okay. He'd walk me back to my place without even trying to come up. He was always clean-shaven, dressed neat, smelled good. Not like cologne, but just clean. The kind of person you'd trust instantly. Bit by bit, I started telling him more about my life, family stuff, job stress, even some personal fears I never told other people. He didn't overshare, but what he did say made him sound grounded. He talked about growing up with a single mom, working odd jobs before landing a decent role in sales. Said he learned early how important stability was. That word, stability, he used it a lot. I liked that. Made me feel like maybe this was going somewhere real. In a city where everyone was chasing something, he seemed like someone who already had a plan. A couple of months in, I realized I was actually looking forward to seeing him more than anyone else. I stopped checking the app, deleted it eventually. He was already starting to talk about the future, like where we could go on a trip together, what kind of place we might want to live in, if things kept going well. That kind of stuff. I found myself daydreaming about those things too, which honestly felt weird at first, but also good. I was calmer around him, more relaxed. Then came the talks about moving in together. Not pushy, just casual mentions at first. Like how it didn't make sense to keep paying 2 rents, or how much easier mornings would be if we lived in the same place. He had a nice apartment in a newer building. High floor, big windows, gym in the basement. I'd been there a few times, and it did feel peaceful. Not cold like some bachelor places. He had books, real food in the fridge, not just beer and leftovers. Still, I hesitated. It felt a bit fast, but he didn't press too hard. He just kept being steady. I'd see his posts on social media, running at 6 a.m., green smoothies, playlists with names like Focus Mode and Discipline. He looked like someone who had everything in order. I remember thinking, maybe this is what safe feels like. So I started leaving more stuff at his place. At first, just a toothbrush, then some clothes, eventually my laptop for when I worked late. He'd already given me a spare key. Most evenings we were together. He liked routine. Dinner by 8, a movie or reading, bed before midnight. His friends came over sometimes. One guy worked in finance, another ran a startup. They were all kind of the same, fit, polite, clean sneakers. We'd sit on the balcony with wine, talk about news, books, future plans. It all felt structured. Nobody drank too much, no loud music. I remember thinking how different it was from my old life. Calmer, more adult. Then I started feeling off. Not in a dramatic way, just tired all the time, like my energy had been slowly leaking out. My appetite dipped. I got random headaches, some mild nausea. I figured it was burnout or maybe just a vitamin deficiency. Too much screen time, not enough sleep. He noticed too, said, "You're just overworked. You need rest, not doctors." He made me smoothies in the morning, brought me supplements and little pill organizers. I didn't argue. I was grateful, honestly. He seemed so sure of what was best. But it kept going. I'd wake up still tired, my skin looked dull, and I started getting dizzy spells. Just standing up too fast would make the room tilt. He kept brushing it off, told me not to overthink it, said city stress does weird things to people. "You're safe here," he said once, while handing me tea. "Your body just needs time to adjust." I believed him. I stopped checking with my regular doctor. I figured I was just being dramatic. He gave me routines to follow, certain foods, certain times to eat. "Your rhythm's off," he said. He even started controlling the lights and noise at night, saying it helped with melatonin. "Trust me," he said. "You'll thank me in a few weeks." I kept staying over more and more, even on weeknights. One evening he said, "You should really just move in already." Then he picked up my suitcase and carried it to his closet without asking. When my condition didn't get better, and instead I started feeling weaker, dizzy, and noticed this strange rash on my arms, I finally went to a clinic. The waiting room was packed, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Everything smelled like antiseptic. I filled out the forms, got blood drawn, and went back to work like usual, assuming they'd tell me I was low on iron or something minor. But when the doctor called me back for a second visit and sat me down with that serious look, I knew it wasn't just stress. The results hit me like a wall. I'd tested positive for a chronic, serious illness, one that you don't just recover from, one that stays with you for life. I sat there frozen, flipping through everything in my head. When, how, where. I've always been cautious, never took risks, barely dated before him. I kept asking the doctor if there could have been a mistake. They just shook their head and handed me a folder full of pamphlets. I walked for 2 hours that night. Just kept going in circles around the block. At home, I didn't even turn the lights on. I sat on the floor in the dark with the test results in my lap. It took days for me to work up the courage to say anything to him. I didn't know how to even start the conversation. When I finally told him, I half expected panic, or denial, or at least questions. But he just looked at me and nodded. No surprise, no confusion. "I know," he said, almost calmly. "I've known for a while." I stared at him, thought maybe I misheard. He continued, like he was discussing a weather forecast. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to scare you off. And look, now it doesn't matter. We're in this together." I didn't say anything. I felt like my whole body had gone numb. He reached out to touch my shoulder, and I flinched. "You don't have to worry anymore," he said. This means we're bonded now. You're not going anywhere. Neither am I." I stood up and walked to the window just to get away from him. From the way he looked so satisfied. That's when I realized. He knew. The whole time. He knew and didn't say a word. My world cracked. He followed me around the apartment for the next few days, trying to talk. Said things like, "This brings us closer," and "We'll have a real reason to stay together now." He tried to cook for me, hold me, told me it was fate, that this was better than anything else. But everything felt wrong. My skin crawled when he touched me. I couldn't sleep in his bed anymore. Every time I looked at him, I saw a person who'd stolen something from me. Someone who made a decision for both of us without ever asking. He kept insisting this was a good thing, that now we had no reason to ever separate. "We're already a family," he said once, like it was that simple. I started sleeping on the couch. I barely ate. I stopped replying to messages from friends. He acted like everything was normal, like this was some new chapter of life we were starting. When I finally told him I was leaving, he dropped the calm act and started pleading. Said I was overreacting. Said he loved me. Promised he would take care of me, now that we had this shared life. I packed my bag and left anyway. I didn't go home right away. I stayed at a coworker's place for a bit, telling her only part of the story. I didn't have the energy to explain everything. The physical toll was bad enough, but mentally, I felt trapped in a fog, like I was moving through thick air. It took weeks to book a proper doctor's appointment, and longer to get myself into therapy. I started meds, read everything I could, joined online support forums. People were kind, but it didn't make the betrayal sting any less. He kept trying to reach out at first, messaging me, calling, even showing up once at my office, waiting outside like it was some rom-com reunion. I told him firmly to stop. After that, silence. It was almost worse. Then I made the decision to report him. I sat in a cold police station for hours, explaining every step, every conversation. The officer taking my statement was quiet, taking notes, nodding slowly. I found out later that I wasn't the first. There were other women. Some had come forward, others hadn't. The file was already thick. But every time, he'd found ways to dodge real consequences, saying he didn't know his status, claiming it was mutual risk, no proof of intent. This time, they opened a formal investigation. But I knew it would be long. I knew it would be hard to prove what was in his mind, even if I had messages, even if I had the diagnosis dates. Still, I pushed forward. I wasn't doing it for revenge. I just didn't want this to happen to anyone else. I threw myself into treatment, appointments, therapy. I had to change my routine completely. I stopped drinking, changed my diet, started focusing on sleep. Some days were better than others. Friends tried to support me, and I appreciated it. But I felt like a different person. Like I'd stepped out of my old life and couldn't go back. Months passed. I didn't hear from him again. Until one morning, I got a message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. No matter what, we're still connected. I didn't reply. I blocked the number and every account I could think of. Sat there shaking, holding the phone like it was a loaded weapon. Then I got up, deleted all the old photos, cleared out my messages, and started over. I live differently now. More cautious. I question things I never used to question. Tones, gestures, details. I no longer trust just words or pictures. I look for patterns, for consistency over time. This story doesn't have a clean ending. I still live with the consequences. The illness, the memory, the damage. But I'm moving forward. If someone had told me this would happen to me, I wouldn't have believed it. It sounds like a nightmare, but it was real. And it started with something so small. A smile, a date, a bunch of wildflowers. That's the thing about trust. It feels safe until it's not. I always thought I was careful when it came to meeting new people. I didn't just swipe and go. Usually I checked profiles closely, made sure to video call at least once or twice, just to confirm things lined up. But this time, everything seemed perfect from the start. She looked normal, friendly, cheerful in her photos, not overly filtered. Her name was Katya. We'd been messaging for about 2 weeks, shared travel pictures, talked about food, even swapped a few dumb stories from work. It all felt easy. Then one evening, she suggested we meet. Said she was tired of noisy bars and wanted to cook instead. She invited me over to her place. That was the first thing that felt slightly off. I offered to meet at a park or maybe just grab coffee. But she said she'd had a rough week and didn't want to go anywhere crowded. I hesitated. A home invite on the first meeting wasn't something I usually agreed to, but she insisted she wasn't comfortable going out. And honestly, I'd had a long week too. and the idea of a quiet dinner sounded better than another loud restaurant. She sent me the address. It was a new apartment complex on the edge of the city. Not a bad area, but a bit far out. She mentioned she'd just moved in and hadn't furnished the place yet. Said she liked keeping things simple, no clutter. When I looked it up, the complex didn't have many reviews yet, probably still getting filled. I figured that made sense. I got there around 7:40 p.m. The sun had already dipped, and the place was oddly quiet. No kids playing, no TVs from open windows, just silent halls and a dimly lit staircase. The elevator was out, so I had to walk up 5 flights. Lights on each landing were those flickery motion sensor types, and a couple didn't turn on at all. Her place was at the end of the top floor, door slightly ajar when I got there. I knocked lightly and called her name. "Katya?" She answered from somewhere inside, told me to come in. Her voice was calm, but a little tight. When I stepped in, she appeared from the hallway almost immediately. She looked the same as in her pictures, maybe a bit paler. She had her hair tied up in a messy knot, wearing a plain t-shirt and loose pants, casual. But her posture seemed stiff, like she was bracing for something. I glanced around. The apartment was almost empty. Just a folding table and 2 mismatched chairs in the living room. No curtains, no couch, no TV. Boxes were pushed against the walls. One of them had plates sticking out of the top. I asked if she'd just moved in, and she nodded. Said she hadn't had time to set everything up yet. Then she mentioned she ordered food instead of cooking. Said she was too tired after all. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then she sat on one of the chairs and started typing on her phone. Fast, like she was trying to get something done before I noticed. I tried to make a joke about the place needing some serious IKEA therapy, but she just looked up, gave a half smile, and looked back down. That's when I noticed a sound coming from the balcony. It was quiet at first, but steady, like metal clinking or scraping. I thought maybe it was the wind hitting something, but it didn't stop. It was too rhythmic. I leaned a little to the side and saw the balcony door was open just a bit. The curtain, just a thin sheet really, moved slightly with the breeze. "Is someone out there?" I asked. She didn't look up, just kept typing. Probably a neighbor, I thought. But the way the sound kept going, it wasn't random, like someone was working on something. Tools, maybe, or shifting chains. Not the kind of noise you expect in a residential building. I walked a bit closer to the balcony. The room was dark, except for the hallway light spilling in from behind. From where I stood, I could see that her balcony shared a wall with the next unit's balcony. And that's where the sound was coming from. Not inside her place, but from that narrow space between 2 walls. Someone moving metal, dragging it, adjusting it. I asked again, louder this time. "Do you know your neighbor?" She looked up slowly and said, "No one lives next door. That unit's empty." Then she went back to her phone. Bit by bit, I started realizing something wasn't right. She wasn't making any effort to talk, barely reacted to anything I said. It felt like she was waiting for something, or someone. I noticed her eyes kept flicking toward the apartment door, the one leading to the hallway. Not casually, but like she was tracking time with every glance. I asked her if everything was okay, and she just nodded once without saying anything. Her legs started bouncing under the table. Then I heard footsteps outside. Slow at first, then stopping right in front of the door. A few quiet voices followed. Low tones, like people whispering but trying to stay calm. My stomach dropped when I heard a key being inserted into the lock. She froze, looked down at her phone again, then grabbed it and said in a low voice, "They're here." "Who's here?" I asked. but she didn't answer. That's when I got up. I didn't care if I looked paranoid. Something was off, and every part of me was screaming to move. I glanced around the room, looking for a second way out. Not much to work with. No back door. But then I saw a window in the corridor that led to the emergency staircase. It was one of those old metal fire escapes, bolted to the outside wall. The kind you see in Soviet-style buildings, narrow, rusted, and high. I took a step toward it as the front door started to open, slow, like someone didn't want to make noise. I didn't wait. I ran to the window, unlocked it with shaking hands, and forced it open. The metal creaked under my weight as I climbed out, gripping the freezing handrails. I tried not to look down. It was a long way to the ground, and I was 5 floors up. One bad step, and that would be it. But I didn't have time to think. I just started moving. Behind me, I heard fast footsteps and the scrape of a chair falling over. The window clattered as someone else reached it. I didn't look back. My hand slipped a little, but I caught the rail and kept descending, rung by rung. The metal groaned under me. Then a voice, loud, clear, called out my name from above. They knew my name. I didn't remember giving it to anyone but Katya. I didn't answer. I just kept moving, my foot almost missing the next step. My legs felt like they weren't even part of me anymore, just shaking sticks. I kept going, hands locked on the cold railing, eyes locked on the wall ahead. I didn't dare glance up or down. The faster I moved, the louder the noise behind me got. Footsteps scrambling, something clanging against the metal above. When I finally got to the bottom, I dropped onto a shared balcony space between 2 buildings. It looked out onto the complex's backyard. Still no people, no lights, no security, nothing. I turned and ran toward the main courtyard, slipping once on the wet concrete. My car was parked across the lot. I kept my head low and sprinted, cutting around a small hedge that separated the buildings from the open parking area. Just as I reached the path, I heard a woman screaming from one of the upper floors. I couldn't make out the words. Could have been Katya. Could have been someone else. Either way, I didn't stop. That place felt like a trap, and staying even a second longer was not an option. I bolted toward my car, heart pounding like it was going to explode. No time to check mirrors, no time to think. I jumped in, slammed the door, started the engine with shaking hands, and floored it. Tires screeched. I didn't care if I was being reckless. I didn't care who I might have clipped while backing out. All I knew was I had to get out of there. I drove straight to the nearest lit area, pulled over, and called the police. I kept it simple. Told them I'd been invited to an apartment and something felt seriously wrong. Gave them the address, the names, everything I could remember. The dispatcher asked me to hold. A few minutes later, another voice came on the line and told me they'd send someone to check it out. What really shook me was what they said next. Apparently, this wasn't the first time they'd gotten a call about that place. There'd been similar reports a week ago. People saying they were invited there by someone online, felt uneasy, then left in a hurry. One guy even said he was threatened when he tried to leave, but didn't file a full report. They didn't have much to go on yet, just a few names and conflicting details. The officers suspected it was some kind of setup, maybe extortion, maybe blackmail. Could have been a group working together, using the apartment as bait. Lure people in, then use threats, maybe drugs or violence to get money or information. I don't know how far they'd go, but I didn't want to find out. I realized I got lucky. I didn't ignore the warning signs. I paid attention to that gut feeling when she kept checking the door, when the place looked too empty, when the sound from the balcony didn't fit. After that night, I made a rule. Never, ever go into someone's home on the first meeting, especially not a place that's out of the way. No matter how good the chat was, no matter how normal they seem. I still get chills when I think about what would have happened if I'd waited even 10 more seconds. I met David at a bar one evening after work. I wasn't planning to stay long, just wanted a cold drink and a few quiet minutes before heading home. He came up while I was halfway through my mojito, made a casual comment about the playlist, and somehow turned it into an easy, relaxed conversation. He was charming without being pushy, well-dressed, neat haircut, polite voice. We ended up talking about music for over an hour. He asked if I was local, told me about a coffee place nearby he liked, and eventually asked if I'd like to exchange numbers. I said sure. He didn't make it weird. A couple days later, he messaged asking if I'd have dinner with him at this small restaurant that was apparently famous for its homemade desserts. I hesitated. Usually I don't go on dates with guys I barely know, but honestly, he seemed decent. No weird vibes, no red flags. I agreed. The place was cozy, dim lights, checkered tablecloths. He arrived on time, pulled out my chair, and asked if I liked lemon pie or if I was more of a chocolate person. The conversation was easy. We swapped stories from high school, talked about old movies we liked, and laughed a few times. He wasn't oversharing, and he didn't try anything weird or flirty. At one point, I checked the time and realized it was getting late. I offered to call a taxi and head home. David smiled and said, "No need. I'll call you a ride. I've got some bonus points saved up anyway." I said okay. Didn't really think twice. The car showed up fast. Like, way too fast. It was parked just around the corner before I even had time to finish checking my notifications. Old model sedan. Dark blue or black, hard to tell in the low light. The windows were tinted way darker than usual. I remember not seeing any company stickers or signs on the doors. No Uber, no Bolt, nothing like that. That gave me a pause. David must have noticed. He opened the rear door for me and said, "Don't worry, it's a private driver I've used before. Reliable guy." Then he leaned down and whispered something to the driver, too quiet for me to catch. That made me pause again, but it all happened quickly, and I didn't want to act paranoid over nothing. I got in. The interior smelled like some kind of industrial cleaner. Not awful, just sharp. The seats were worn, cracked in places. No company decal on the dashboard, no phone holder, no ID or license card in sight. The driver didn't say a word. He didn't ask my name or confirm the destination. He just shifted into gear and pulled away from the curb. At first, I thought maybe the route was just avoiding traffic or construction. But the further we drove, the less familiar everything looked. He took a left at a light that should have been a right. Then another detour down a side street that felt too quiet for that time of night. "Excuse me," I said, leaning forward slightly. "Aren't we going the wrong way?" The driver glanced in the rearview mirror but didn't respond. Not even a shrug or a nod. Just a quick look, then eyes back on the road. I sat back slowly, tried not to show anything on my face. My hands were resting on my knees, but I could feel how tense my fingers were. I looked out the window, trying to see any street signs I might recognize, but the area was unfamiliar. Fewer streetlights. More warehouses and chain-link fences. I sent a quick text to my roommate. On my way home, should be there soon. But didn't mention anything else. I thought maybe if I didn't act like anything was wrong, I could just figure it out. Maybe I'd misjudged the route. Maybe he had some GPS I couldn't see. Maybe it was still okay. The car kept going. Another turn, even deeper into the industrial area. Fewer cars, no houses, just long stretches of concrete, metal gates, and empty loading docks. The driver still hadn't spoken. No music, no GPS voice, just the sound of tires on old pavement. After a few more blocks, it became obvious we were going way farther from my neighborhood. The streets got quieter, fewer lights, barely any foot traffic. Most storefronts were shut, and the occasional cars we passed didn't make me feel any safer. I kept looking out the window, trying to recognize anything, but it all looked industrial, unfamiliar. I spotted a supermarket coming up, a small one with flickering lights over the entrance, and I leaned forward, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, can we stop here for a minute? I just need to grab some water." The driver didn't slow down. He just kept his eyes ahead and mumbled, "Can't stop here. Bad traffic setup." Which didn't even make sense. The road was empty. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't a detour. He wasn't lost. I took out my phone, quickly tried to call my friend Anna. The signal was weak. The screen froze. I hung up and tried again, but it kept cutting out. I opened the voice message option, pressed record and whispered, "Something's wrong. I'm in a car, not sure where it's going. Please check my location." I sent it, praying it would go through. The car took another turn. No street signs, just a long road with low fences and some kind of warehouses on one side. My hands were sweating. I adjusted my position, looked around the front of the car. No visible GPS. No ride-hailing app interface on the dashboard. Trying to distract him, and maybe buy some time, I asked, "So, how long you been driving?" He didn't turn his head, just gave a low grunt. I couldn't make out if it was meant as a number or just a noise. That's when I realized he hadn't once asked where I was going. No destination. Nothing. It hit me like a cold slap. He didn't need directions because David already told him everything. Up ahead, bright lights suddenly came into view. One of those full-service gas stations, with a big convenience store and visible security cameras above the pumps. Neon signs, vending machines outside, people coming in and out. I leaned forward again, firmer this time. "Stop here. I need to get out. Now." The car hesitated, then slowed. Maybe the cameras spooked him. Maybe he didn't want to risk someone noticing something off. Either way, as soon as the tires rolled to a stop near the entrance, I yanked the handle, pushed the door open, and jumped out before he could change his mind. I didn't look back, just ran straight toward the store entrance, into the bright light, passing under the camera mounted over the door. My legs felt stiff and shaky, but I kept moving. The automatic doors slid open, and I heard the driver yell something behind me, but he didn't follow. When I turned around, the car was already pulling away fast, taillights disappearing down the road. Inside, there was just the cashier, young guy in a hoodie scrolling on his phone. No one else around. But I didn't care. I stayed near the counter, pulled out my phone, and opened the regular taxi app. Ordered a ride, double-checked the driver name, plate, car model, everything. When the real car arrived 10 minutes later, I made sure to check the driver's face, his name, asked him to confirm my name before I even opened the door. Only when all of it matched, I got in. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, local news sites were full of headlines about a string of disappearances tied to fake ride orders. Police said the suspects used apps with cloned interfaces or hijacked legitimate accounts to pick up victims. The method was always the same. One guy would meet a woman in a social setting, build trust, then offer her a ride home. A second man would pose as the driver. A third one sometimes waited in a different location, depending on the situation. It made my stomach turn, imagining how close I'd been to something worse. I called the police that afternoon, gave them everything I had. David's name, the bar where we met, the restaurant, what he looked like, what he said. I also gave them the partial plate number I remembered from the car. It wasn't the full thing, but it was something. Turns out, They already had 2 other women with similar stories. One of them never made it home, still missing. Another managed to get away at a red light. Same MO. Same kind of car. Same smooth-talking guy who didn't seem dangerous at first. The detective I spoke to told me there was an active investigation, and the group seemed to be targeting women who lived alone or had predictable routines. I kept thinking about how I almost ignored the strange feeling I got when I saw that car. How easy it would have been to just sit quietly, tell myself I was overreacting. But something inside pushed me to act. Not bravely, just fast. Now, I don't care how charming someone seems. If I didn't call the ride myself, I'm not getting in. Even if it's free or convenient or comes with some kind of points. I'd rather walk, or wait, or cancel the whole night. Because that night, one decision, to get out at the gas station, probably saved my life. The weirdest part? I didn't even recognize her at first. I was standing in line at the little corner store we all used to hang around after school, just grabbing some milk and bread. The door jingled behind me, and I didn't pay much attention until I heard someone say my name. I turned around, and there she was, Alina. She used to sit 2 rows behind me in school. Back then, she was all energy and ambition, always organizing events, running around with a camera, saying she'd be famous someday. She looked different now, more tired around the eyes, but she still had that sharp way of looking at you, like she was sizing up your soul in 5 seconds. She smiled when I said I barely recognized her, said I looked exactly the same, only grown up. We chatted for a few minutes in the store. I told her I'd just moved back to take care of my dad's old business. She laughed and said it felt like everyone was being pulled back to this place eventually. Before I paid, I asked if she wanted to grab coffee sometime, and she said, "Why not now?" We walked to this tiny cafe across from the post office. It hasn't changed at all. Same chip tiles and laminated menus. We sat by the window and caught up. She told me about how she'd left town right after school, tried working in fashion in Moscow, then bounced between jobs. Nothing stuck, she said. She'd come back just last year when her mom got sick and stayed after she passed. I told her I remembered how driven she used to be. She just shrugged and said, "Life's not as simple as it looked from those school desks." We laughed a bit over old classmates, old teachers. The coffee went cold while we kept talking. There wasn't any awkwardness. It just felt like we picked up mid-conversation from 10 years ago. When we left, I walked her to her building. We stood outside a minute, and before I could say anything else, she gave me her number and said, "Let's not lose each other again." I texted her later that night. She replied immediately. We started meeting more. A walk in the park. A quick dinner at that cheap pelmeni place near the station. She always had stories, some funny, some kind of bleak. Once, she mentioned she'd almost gotten scammed working for a modeling agency in the city. Another time, she talked about being fired from a receptionist job for standing up to her boss. I couldn't tell if she was exaggerating or just brushing over something worse. With each meeting, I started noticing things didn't add up. She said she lived alone now, but once when I came over, she quickly shoved something into a drawer near the entrance. Papers, maybe. She said it was just junk mail. Her apartment was small, basic, a little messy but not dirty, mostly quiet. The furniture looked like hand-me-downs. A kettle with a melted handle, curtains too short for the windows. But she kept the place warm, made tea like it was a ritual. The second time I stayed over, I saw a framed photo turned face down on her shelf. She said it was her ex and that it didn't mean anything. She told me she was looking for work again. Said her savings were almost gone. I offered to help with her resume, maybe ask around. She waved it off, said she didn't want to owe anyone. A week later, I offered to lend her a bit of cash, just enough to get by for a while. She smiled but didn't take it. Said, "You're sweet, but I'm not that desperate yet." Her words, not mine. Still, I kept coming back. We'd eat whatever was cheap. Eggs, pasta, frozen dumplings. Sometimes she'd get a bottle of wine and we'd sit by the window just talking. She told me how she never really got close to people anymore. How every job, every friendship seemed to fall apart. People only like the surface, she said once. Once they see the cracks, they bolt. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her and stayed. She had this way of asking questions that made me open up without thinking. I told her more than I planned to, about my dad, how the business is slower than I let on, how I never really fit into city life even though I tried. She didn't say much back, just nodded, sometimes looked at me a bit too long, like she was trying to decide if I was lying or just naive. One night, it rained hard, and I stayed over again. The sound on the windows made it feel like we were in a different world. She pulled out an old blanket, and we lay there in the half-dark, her head on my chest. "Feels like we should have done this a long time ago," she whispered. After that, I started thinking about the future more. Not big plans, not wedding bells or anything, but small things, like getting her a new kettle, fixing the loose shelf in her kitchen, being around more. Maybe seeing if she wanted to help with the shop. It felt like something good was starting again, like something I didn't know I'd been waiting for. We kept meeting like that for a while. Quiet evenings, little routines forming. I gave her a spare key to my place in case she ever wanted to get away from hers for a bit. She never used it. Said she was fine where she was. But something started to shift. I couldn't say what exactly. Maybe how she'd go silent during some conversations, or how she suddenly didn't answer texts for a day, then acted like nothing happened. Once, I came over, and her front door was locked from inside, even though she was supposed to be out. She didn't explain it, just said she must have forgotten something and came back briefly. Her explanations always sounded okay. Not good, but just okay enough. I didn't push. I figured she had her own pace, her own space. But I started noticing how often she checked her phone during dinner, how she never let it out of her sight. One time, a message popped up while it was on the table. She snatched it before I could see, said it was spam. Still, I didn't walk away. I told myself everyone has their secrets. I wanted to trust her. I thought maybe if I just stayed long enough, she'd open up more. The last time I saw her that week, we were sitting in her kitchen. It was late. She lit a cigarette and stared out the open window. I was talking about a guy I knew who needed someone to help with bookkeeping. Thought maybe it could be a fit for her. She didn't respond, just kept staring out. Then she said, very quietly, "You don't really know me." After that night, things got strange fast. She became unpredictable. At first, it was small stuff. If I didn't reply to a text quickly enough, she'd send 3 or 4 more with a cold edge to them. If I tried to change our plans last minute, she'd get quiet in a way that felt like holding in something dangerous. The worst was when I forgot to bring the groceries she asked for, just eggs and tea, nothing serious. I came to her place like usual, handed her the bag, and she pulled everything out silently. When she didn't find what she wanted, she just stared at the empty spot where the tea should have been. Then she snapped. "You never listen. I tell you one thing, one small thing, and you screw it up," she shouted, loud enough that I heard footsteps stop in the hallway outside. "You don't care. You pretend to, but you don't. You're just like all the others." I stood there frozen. I opened my mouth to say it was a simple mistake, that I'd go back out and get it, but she waved me off and stormed into the other room, slamming the door. 15 minutes later, she came out like nothing happened. "Sorry," she said, putting a hand on my arm. "Rough week, My bad. Want some soup? I nodded, even though I wasn't hungry. I just didn't know what else to do. After that, I started walking on eggshells. If she seemed off, I stayed quiet. If she was in a good mood, I tried to keep it going. I told myself it was just stress, leftover trauma, maybe depression. But sometimes, I'd catch her staring at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Hard stares, like she was measuring me against something I'd never understand. And then, just like that, she'd smile again, touch my shoulder, call me sweet. I tried to rationalize everything. I thought if I just gave her more stability, if I just stayed kind, she'd level out. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I started losing sleep, and even when I was at home, I'd catch myself checking the locks twice, scanning the street before stepping outside. It was a Tuesday when everything broke. We were sitting at her table, having a quiet dinner. Nothing dramatic, just soup and bread. Out of nowhere, she asked if I remembered the time in school when everyone laughed after she said she wanted to be a model. I didn't. I told her that honestly. Her face changed. "You laughed," she said flatly. "I really don't remember that," I replied. "If I did, I'm sorry." "You did," she said again, louder. "You all laughed. You stood there with the others. You think that stuff just disappears?" I tried to calm her down, said maybe it was a misunderstanding. She stood up. I followed her into the kitchen. I kept saying we should talk it through, but she wasn't listening anymore. Her hands were shaking. Then she grabbed something off the counter. I think it was a metal fruit bowl, or maybe a thick mug, and before I could move, she swung it at me. The pain exploded instantly, sharp, white. My knees gave out. I hit the floor hard. Everything around me dimmed, like someone slowly pulling a sheet over the world. I remember her yelling something, but it was muffled, like underwater. My vision swam, blurred, then went black entirely. I blinked, tried to open my eyes, but nothing came. No light, no shape, just darkness. I don't know how long I was out. Minutes, hours. She was gone when I woke up. I was still on the floor, couldn't see, couldn't tell if it was night or day. The only thing I knew was that I was alone. My hands moved around slowly, touching cold tile and a broken plate. My head throbbed with every breath. Later, I learned the neighbors had heard the yelling and crash. One of them called the building manager, who found me and called an ambulance. I was unconscious again by the time they got me out. I woke up in a hospital bed, the smell of disinfectant and metal thick in the air. A nurse said I'd had a serious head injury. A detached retina, major trauma. The doctors had done what they could, but the damage was too deep. They told me I might never see again. I didn't speak for a long time. Just lay there, staring into nothing. I didn't even cry. I couldn't make sense of it. They found her a few days later in another district, wandering without shoes, clutching her phone like it was a weapon. She didn't resist. The police said she was in a dissociative state. Later, they called it temporary psychosis. She was taken to a facility. I still think about that moment. That one flash of anger, that one object in her hand, that 1 second. My whole life changed. The business I was trying to rebuild, gone. My routines, my freedom, even simple things like making coffee or walking alone, gone. Now I'm learning to live without sight. I use a cane. I go to therapy. I try to memorize my apartment layout. I count steps when I go to the store with someone guiding me. Every part of life is different now. People keep saying I'm brave. I don't feel brave. I feel like I was too blind before, when I could still see. I ignored the signs. I kept telling myself she was just hurt, just going through something. But there's a line. A point where helping someone starts to cost too much. I crossed it, and I didn't even know until it was too late. It started out as just a regular double date. My friend Alina had been wanting me to meet her boyfriend's buddy for a while. Said he was funny, kind of quirky, but smart and nice. I wasn't super into the idea of being set up, but I figured it couldn't hurt. We met up at this burger place in the center, one of those slightly hipster joints with the dim lighting and paper menus. Alina and her guy, Ruslan, were already there when I arrived. The guy they wanted to introduce me to, his name was Maxim, was sitting across from Ruslan, already halfway through a beer. First impression? He seemed fine. Pretty outgoing, had a way of telling stories that kept the conversation moving. He made a few solid jokes, not in a try-hard way, just casual. He asked about my work, which surprised me, because most guys just talk about themselves. I told him I did admin work at a small publishing company, and he seemed genuinely interested. Nothing intense, just nice back and forth. I relaxed a bit. About 30 minutes in, someone suggested going to the movies. Ruslan had seen a trailer earlier for a new crime drama starring one of my favorite actors, Mikhail Levin. The guy's in everything lately, but he's seriously good. I mentioned how much I liked his work, and Maxime immediately said, "Oh yeah, let's go see it. I've been meaning to check that one out." He didn't hesitate at all, which I liked. So we paid the bill and headed down to the cinema. It was only a short walk from the burger place. The theater was half full, not too noisy. We got seats near the middle row. I sat between Alina and Maxime. During the movie, I noticed Maxime watching the screen kind of intently. Not in a fan way, more like he was studying something. At first, I thought maybe he just liked the plot, or was analyzing the scenes like a film student. But it got to the point where I caught him staring every time Mikhail Levine was in a close-up. He didn't even blink. It was like he was trying to memorize every line on the actor's face. When the movie ended, we stood around in the lobby to talk about it. Alina said the story was better than she expected. Ruslan complained about the ending, and I said something about Levin's performance being the best part. That's when Maxime suddenly stepped in, a little too fast, saying, "Of course it was the best part. You know why? Because he's one of the few people I would actually follow anywhere." His tone was strange. Like, it wasn't a compliment. It was more like he was declaring something important. I laughed a little, trying to keep it light, and said, "Yeah, he's definitely a strong actor." But Maxime wasn't smiling. He stared past us for a moment, then said, "No, I mean it. The man's got presence. People like that. They demand loyalty." The mood shifted. Alina raised her eyebrows at me just briefly. Ruslan tried to change the topic, but Maxim kept going. He started talking about how everyone's fake in the industry, but not Levin. He's real. He says what he means, not like these posers who don't even know who they are. We stepped outside, and the air was cold and damp. Maxim pulled on his coat but didn't zip it up. He walked a few steps ahead, then suddenly turned around and started speaking louder, to all of us, but almost like he was having an argument with someone invisible. "You know what pisses me off?" he said. "How people look at fans like they're all gay or confused or something. Like you can't admire a man without people thinking you're into him. That's messed up." No one replied. We were all standing there, kind of stiff. Cars were passing on the road nearby, and a group of teenagers walked by with takeaway coffee. Maxim didn't stop. He went on, louder this time. "Just because I respect someone doesn't mean I'm not normal. I'm normal. I'm not some pervert. People make assumptions, but I know who I am." Alina tried to cut in, gently. "Maxim, no one said anything about that. We were just talking about the movie." He ignored her. His hands were out in front of him, gesturing like he was trying to convince someone. "It's always the same. You say you like someone's work, and suddenly you're labeled. But I'm not ashamed to say I respect real men, real strength. I've always been straight, okay? Always. Don't twist my words." I glanced at Alina. She looked uncomfortable, shifting from one foot to the other. Ruslan was watching Maxim closely, not saying a word yet, but his jaw was tight. I took a step forward and tried to keep my voice calm. It's all right. I don't think anyone's saying otherwise. Maybe let's just walk a bit? But Maxim wasn't done. He raised his voice again, arms spreading out wide. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not scared to say what I think. People are slaves to these stereotypes. I'm free from that. You hear me? I'm free. Some pedestrians had stopped to look. A man with a stroller turned his head. Two girls standing by the curb were whispering and watching. I felt more than awkward now. I felt exposed. Alina stepped forward and reached toward his elbow, trying to guide him away from the middle of the sidewalk. Let's get some air down by the river, she said. But Maxim pulled his arm back fast, not violently, but enough to make it clear he didn't want to be touched. Don't. I don't need calming down, he snapped. I'm just saying what no one else wants to admit. Ruslan finally moved in, putting a hand on his shoulder, firm but low-key. All right, Max. Let's chill, yeah? No one's attacking you. Let's just cool off for a bit. Maxim jerked his shoulder away. I said don't touch me, he barked, voice sharp. A few people passing by stopped walking and looked over. He was pacing now, just a few feet, like he was trying to burn off energy. His arms kept moving, not wildly, just in these weird sweeping motions like he was drawing invisible shapes in the air. We had to move away from the main street. Too many people were starting to notice, and a couple were even filming on their phones. Alina quietly suggested we walk around the corner to the side alley near the parking lot. It was quieter there, just the buzz of some neon sign and the hum of a distant tram. When we stopped, I turned to Maxim and asked him calmly, "What's going on with you? Why are you reacting like this? It's just a movie." He didn't look at me, just stared off past the fence like he was watching something. Then he said, "It's not the movie. It's how people think. They always assume things. Like, I go watch some actor and suddenly they're whispering, saying I must be hiding something." I said, "Nobody said anything like that. We just watched the film and talked about the plot." But he shook his head and mumbled, "You think it. You don't say it, but I can tell. People always think they know better. They see a man admire another man and immediately they judge." His voice wasn't loud now, just low and tight, like he was arguing with himself more than with us. That's when it hit me. This had nothing to do with the movie. He wasn't upset with us, not really. He was caught in his own thoughts, battling something he hadn't made peace with, and for some reason, this night pushed it to the surface. I said quietly, "Maxim, I don't care who you like or why. That's not the issue. We just came to hang out, watch a film, that's it." But he stepped back, his arms crossed now. "No, I need to make it clear. I'm done letting people put me in a box. I have to prove I'm normal. I have to prove I can have normal relationships." His tone was serious, not dramatic, like he really believed he had something to prove. The way he stared at me then made my stomach tense. Not because he looked angry, but because he looked like he was waiting for something. From me. Like I had some role in his need for control over the situation. I looked over at Alina and Ruslan. They were both quiet, unsure what to do. I just shook my head slightly and said, "No one here is accusing you of anything. There's nothing to prove. You're making this into something it's not." But he wasn't listening anymore. He turned away and walked in a small circle, then back again. I've dealt with this before. People thinking they know better than me. But I'm not going to be labeled. I know who I am. I felt like I was stuck in a loop with him. Every sentence he said pulled us further from anything normal. I felt stupid just standing there, like I was being forced into some conflict I didn't ask for. Finally, I said, Maybe we should just leave it here. Go home. There's no point in arguing about something no one even brought up. He stopped pacing. For a second, he didn't say a word. He just stared at the ground like something clicked. His whole posture changed, like he suddenly realized how far he'd gone. There was this beat of silence between us all. But instead of apologizing or saying anything at all, he just turned around without a word and walked straight to his car. It was parked a few meters away. He yanked the door open and slammed it shut so hard that the sound echoed against the nearby building. The engine started immediately, headlights flashed on, and for a second I thought he might just peel out of there. But he didn't. He just sat in the car with the engine running, looking straight ahead, unmoving. None of us walked over. Ruslan let out a breath and rubbed the back of his neck. Alina was just staring at the pavement. I had no idea what to say. There wasn't anything left to say. I tried calling him later when I got home, just to see if he was okay. No answer. I waited 5 minutes and called again. Still nothing. That night, I lay awake, replaying everything in my head, trying to understand what had set him off, if there was some sign earlier I had missed. It didn't make sense. He'd gone from charming and funny to defensive and unstable in a matter of hours. I started wondering if he'd had a few drinks before we met, or if something else was going on. The next morning, I opened my phone to message him again. But he was gone. Deleted me completely. No chat history, no name in the contact list. Just user not found. I checked Instagram. Same thing. Blocked. I thought maybe it was just me, so I messaged Alina. She called and said he'd done the same to Ruslan. Just vanished. No texts, no follow-up, nothing. She said Ruslan tried calling too, but Maxim didn't pick up. I asked if they knew any of his other friends. She gave me one guy's number. I texted him. He replied after an hour saying he hadn't heard from Maxim in days, and they were supposed to hang out that weekend. Said he just didn't show. After that, I stopped trying. There was nothing else to do. He clearly didn't want to talk to anyone. Maybe he was embarrassed. Maybe he was angry. Or maybe he just couldn't handle facing us again. I'll never really know. I wasn't angry, just thrown off. How someone can go from warm and friendly to unpredictable like that in such a short time. It made me rethink how I meet people, how I let my guard down when someone seems nice at first. I guess we all do that. We want to see the best in someone, especially when they make us laugh or seem interested in us. But now I pay more attention to the little signs, the moments where someone says too much about something that doesn't match the situation, the way they react when the spotlight isn't on them. Because sometimes, behind the charm, there's something waiting to crack, something even they don't understand. And when it does, it doesn't just catch them off guard, it catches everyone around them too. I lived in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. I was in college, juggling classes with a part-time job at a warehouse. My days were mostly the same. Early shifts, lectures, assignments. Not a lot of room for anything else. One Friday, my friend Alex dragged me to a house party. I didn't really want to go, but he kept saying I needed a break. The party was at a place I didn't know, some mutual friend of his. Just a regular living room packed with people, loud music, cheap beer. I stayed near the wall at first, scrolling my phone until I saw her. She had a bright smile that kind of lit up the room. Not overly done up, just jeans and a hoodie, but there was something about how calm and confident she looked. I don't usually start conversations with strangers, but she made eye contact first. We started talking. Her name was Daria. We laughed over some jokes someone else had made in the background, and the conversation just kept going. She was easy to talk to. She asked questions like she was actually listening. Said she liked books, indie music, worked out in the mornings before class. I told her about my job, school, my shift schedule. She nodded, like she got it. We didn't stay at the party too long. She had to leave early, but before she left, we exchanged numbers. After that, we started texting on and off. Nothing heavy. Just casual stuff. Memes, short conversations about books, or a song one of us liked. I'd message her between classes or on my break at the warehouse. She kept things light, but she always replied. Eventually we met again, just the two of us. Coffee at this place near campus. We sat outside, people passing by, her talking about some novel she was into. We met again later that week, walked through the park, each holding a cup of takeout coffee, sitting on a bench near the pond. She seemed smart, focused. She had this calm way of speaking, never rushed. I started looking forward to her texts. When she said she wanted to hang out again, I didn't hesitate. After about a month, she invited me over to her place. It was a small apartment, just a few streets away from mine, clean and pretty simple. She offered tea. We watched some movie neither of us paid attention to. That night, she mentioned her uncle lived nearby. Said he was curious about me. That maybe next time she'd introduce us. It sounded kind of formal, but I said sure. The next weekend she brought it up again. Told me her uncle had asked to meet me. Said he lived only 10 minutes away. I didn't think much of it. We planned to walk there after grabbing some food, but when we were getting ready to leave, she got a message. She looked at her phone and sighed. Said her uncle had some work thing come up last minute and couldn't meet after all. She smiled and said it wasn't a big deal, but then she handed me a plastic package, not sealed, just one of those reusable shopping bags, and asked me to take it to him anyway. It's a book and a little souvenir, she said. Something he left here the last time he visited. I took the bag automatically. It didn't feel heavy. I asked if I should go now or later. She said, "If it's not a problem, just drop it off on your way home. He's expecting it." I asked what exactly was inside. She laughed a little and said, "It's really just a rare book he collects and a little model he got from a trip. He's picky about his stuff. Just be careful with it." She sent me the address by text, told me his name was Ivan, and added, "He'll explain everything when you get there." I was running a little late for work, so I didn't want to overthink it. I glanced inside the bag. There was a hardcover book wrapped in thin paper, and something small underneath it that I couldn't see clearly, maybe a box or case. I didn't dig further. She seemed relaxed, smiled like always, said thanks again for helping. I left her place and walked toward the bus stop, holding the bag in one hand and checking my phone for the address. It was a few stops past my usual route, but not out of the way. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights pass. The bag rested on my lap the whole time. It crossed my mind that the whole thing was a little strange. Why not drop it off herself? Why was her uncle so eager to get this stuff but not free to meet in person? But she'd been normal all this time. Nothing about her had set off alarms before. And I didn't want to make it weird. The bus ride was quiet. It was already dark out. I got off near a pharmacy and started walking toward the address she texted. It was a residential street, older buildings, a little rundown. Not sketchy, but not exactly polished either. The building number matched. It was a faded yellow 3-story with cracked stairs and a buzz panel at the front. I hit the button for apartment 2B, like she told me. There was a pause. Then a man's voice answered, "Yes?" I said, "Hi, Daria sent me. I have the package for you." Another pause. Then, "Come up." The buzzer clicked. I pulled the door open and stepped into the dim hallway. The lights inside were dull, one of them flickering. The walls smelled faintly of old paint and dust. I walked up the stairs holding the bag close. The second floor had only 2 doors. I stopped in front of 2B and knocked. The door opened halfway. A man stood there, middle-aged, balding, wearing a dark shirt and jeans. He looked me up and down, then pointed at the bag. "That for me?" I nodded and held it out. I handed him the bag, and he barely looked at me before taking it and shutting the door without another word. I stood there for a second, not sure if I was supposed to wait, but then I turned and headed back down the stairs. The hallway felt even darker now, the buzz of that flickering light loud in the silence. I left the building and walked toward the bus stop, checking the time on my phone. I was late for my shift already. The bus wasn't coming for another 15 minutes, so I decided to call a rideshare. I didn't want to be even later. When the car pulled up, I got in and told the driver my work address. We'd barely gone 2 blocks before I saw the flashing lights. A police car was blocking the intersection. Another one was parked along the curb just ahead. I didn't think anything of it until the car slowed down, and one of the officers waved us over. The driver rolled down his window, and the officer asked both of us to step out of the vehicle. It was fast. Suddenly there were 2 more cops, and one of them motioned to me specifically. "Sir, can you open your trunk, please?" I was confused, told him it wasn't my car, but he pointed at my backpack. "You came from that building back there?" I nodded slowly, not understanding what was happening. Another officer came up and asked me to step to the side. They opened my bag. It had nothing but my charger, water bottle, and a hoodie. But then one of the officers pulled out the plastic bag Daria had given me. He opened it, carefully pulling out the items inside. The book was wrapped in the paper just like before, but when he removed the paper, inside was a thick stack of vacuum-sealed plastic. The officer unwrapped a corner, sniffed, then looked at the others. "This looks like something else," he said. "We'll need to test this." Another bundle was inside, the one I hadn't seen before. It looked like dark wax or resin, tightly packed. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything. Couldn't, really. One of the officers asked me, "Do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "No. I swear I didn't know." He raised an eyebrow, didn't say anything for a second, then gestured for me to sit on the curb. I did. After a few minutes, they cuffed me. Not rough, but firm. "You're being detained for questioning," one of them said. "We're going to have to take you in." At the station, I was placed in a holding room. The light above was too bright. The chair was hard plastic. They left me there for what felt like an hour before a man came in with a folder. He sat across from me, opened it, and asked, "Where did you get the package?" I told him everything. That a girl I was seeing gave it to me. That she said it was a book and a souvenir for her uncle. That I had no idea what was inside. He just stared at me. "What's her name?" I told him. "Got a last name?" I didn't know it. I gave her number. It was disconnected. I gave her Instagram handle. When they checked, the account was gone. He leaned back. "You understand how this looks, right? You show up at an address, drop off a package full of what looks like controlled substances, and say you didn't know anything about it." I nodded, couldn't say much else. It was clear I looked like an idiot. Or worse, like I was in on it. They left again. I sat there, not moving, until finally I asked to make a call. I phoned Alex, the same friend who'd brought me to that party. He picked up, groggy. I explained what had happened in short, panicked bursts. He sounded shocked. I gave the phone to the officer, and Alex confirmed who I was, said I'd never been into anything shady, that I barely even drank. That seemed to help. Another few hours passed before they let me go under the condition that I'd return for more questioning. No charges yet, but they made it clear I wasn't in the clear. Don't leave town, they said. We're still looking into this. When I got home, my parents were waiting. They'd already been called. My dad stood by the door, arms crossed. My mom just looked like she couldn't believe it. I told them everything, every detail. They didn't yell, just stood there, quiet. A few days later, the police called me back in. They said they'd found out more. The girl, Daria, wasn't even using her real name. She was part of a small group that had been running low-level smuggling operations for months, maybe years. Their method was simple. They'd meet people, gain trust, then use them as couriers. The people didn't even know what they were transporting. No paper trails, no real links. Hard to trace. Smart. They showed me photos. One of the men they were still searching for looked like the guy who opened the door at apartment 2B. Turned out he didn't live there. He'd rented it short-term with fake documents. Gone now. Vanished. They asked me to come in again, this time to give them all the messages I'd ever exchanged with her. Screenshots, email, DMs. I gave them everything. They took it seriously, but one of the officers said I was lucky. Others didn't get off so easy, he said. You got out before it got worse. No charges were filed in the end, but it stuck with me. The embarrassment, the fear. The feeling that I was one wrong answer away from losing everything. I had to explain it to work. I had to go back to school like nothing happened. But it was always there. Now I check everything. Every new person I meet. I ask questions. I double-check things. I don't take packages, ever. I don't go to random addresses. I don't trust smiles right away. People say I'm paranoid. Maybe. But I know how close I came. I'm glad I didn't end up behind bars, but the whole thing left a bad taste I can't shake. She used me. Clean. Simple. Like it was nothing. And if the cops hadn't been at the right place at the right time, I'd be the one in a cell, still trying to explain how I didn't know. In my free time between classes, I used to scroll through forums and social apps, trying to find new people to talk to. Making close friends on campus wasn't easy. Most classmates just stuck to their groups, and small talk after lectures rarely turned into anything deeper. One evening, while half watching a documentary and browsing a site where people talked about shared hobbies, I got a message from a guy who said he liked psychology and music. Those were my main interests too, so I responded. He didn't jump straight into compliments or anything flirty. Instead, he asked what I thought about a certain psychological experiment and mentioned a few lesser-known bands I actually listened to. It wasn't a typical way to start a chat, and that made it interesting. We started messaging almost daily. It wasn't romantic or intense, just steady and curious. He seemed really well-read. He dropped these random facts about how sound affects emotion or how people form habits without being preachy. I liked that he didn't talk about himself too much, but also didn't ask anything invasive. The rhythm of the conversations was comfortable. Some days we'd send just a few messages, other days we'd talk for hours. He never pushed for selfies or anything weird. That helped me feel like this was just a friendly connection, nothing sketchy. After about 2 weeks, he brought up meeting in real life. He suggested a quiet park, but I said I'd be more comfortable somewhere public. We settled on the big shopping mall downtown. I went there often with my friends, and it felt familiar and safe. Lots of people, cameras, stores, and food courts. I figured even if it got awkward, it wouldn't be dangerous or hard to leave. He agreed right away and said he'd meet me by the main fountain at the center of the mall. That spot was usually crowded, especially on weekends, so I felt okay about it. I arrived about 15 minutes early, mostly because I didn't want to be rushed or flustered. The fountain area had plenty of benches, and I picked one near the edge where I could see the escalators and entrances. I was dressed casual, just jeans and a hoodie, and had a book in my bag in case I needed a distraction. My phone had a full charge. I texted a friend to let her know where I was and who I was meeting. She didn't reply right away, but I felt better having told someone. People came and went around me. Kids threw coins in the water. Couples passed by holding hands. Some teenagers sat near the edge, blasting music from a speaker. I checked my phone again. No message yet. Around 10 minutes later, I saw someone approaching who matched the basic description he'd given. He wasn't smiling. His shoulders were tense, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes darting around. He looked different than I imagined. Not worse, just stiffer. In his messages, he had this laid-back tone, always joking or tossing out random facts. But in person, he moved like someone on edge. He said hi and sat next to me without much eye contact. His voice was low, kind of flat. I thought maybe he was nervous. First meetings can be awkward, and I didn't want to judge too fast. I asked if he found the place easily. He nodded, said something about traffic. Then silence for a few seconds. I tried bringing up one of the bands we'd talked about. He gave a short answer, changed the topic. Instead, he made a weird joke about people in malls being like cattle. They just wander around, buying things they don't need, breathing the same stale air, he said. I gave a polite laugh, unsure what to say. It felt like he was trying to sound deep or clever, but the vibe was off. We started walking through the mall. He didn't suggest food or coffee, just kept moving from one floor to the next. We passed by the bookstore, the electronics store, then circled back. He still wasn't talking about music or psychology. Instead, he started ranting about how society was broken, how people deserved consequences. Hardcore measures, he called them. I asked what he meant, and he shrugged. You know, stuff that wakes people up, shocks them out of their little routines. I didn't like the way he said it. Not angry, not sarcastic, just serious. Too serious. I stopped walking for a second and said maybe we should sit and get a drink. He agreed, but didn't head toward the food court. Instead, he walked toward one of the quieter wings where a few shops were closed down and fewer people passed by. I followed a bit behind him now, not totally sure why I didn't just say I wanted to leave. He turned and waited for me near a closed toy store, leaned against the wall, looked out at the people moving past the open area below us. Then he whispered, I could surprise any of them, you know. Just walk up and... He mimed a quick motion with his hand, like hitting someone or pulling something out of his pocket. They'd never see it coming. I froze. He didn't laugh or look at me for a reaction. He just kept watching the people below. I said, That's not funny. He finally looked at me, tilting his head. I didn't say it was a joke. That was the moment I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't just walk away fast or make him angry. Something about his calmness was worse than if he'd been loud or aggressive. He kept glancing behind him, down the hallway, then back at the crowd. We stepped into the electronics store, and he immediately looked up at the ceiling where the cameras were mounted. You know these things only record in cycles, he said. If you study the timing, it's easy to move between the blind spots. He wasn't whispering, but his tone was low, like he was just sharing a random fact. I didn't know what to say, so I gave a small nod and tried to change the subject. I asked if he'd seen any good movies lately. He ignored the question and kept walking down the aisle of phone accessories. Then he stopped next to a display and said, Fear's a funny thing. People go about their day thinking they're safe. One unexpected sound, one sudden move, and they panic like animals. He smirked a little. You don't even have to hurt anyone. Just a well-placed surprise. That's enough to make them remember you. I laughed awkwardly, trying to push it off like he was just being edgy. but it was getting harder to pretend. His words weren't jokes anymore. It was like he wasn't talking to me, but thinking out loud. I realized I didn't want to be standing next to him, especially not in a place where we were a little out of sight. I started backing slowly toward the store entrance, pretending to check out some phone cases. He didn't follow right away. He stayed behind for a few seconds, watching the security monitor near the counter. "It's all patterns," he said. "People, cameras, schedules. Once you understand them, everything becomes predictable." I forced a smile and said I needed a minute to freshen up. "Just need to run to the restroom. I'll be back in a sec." He looked at me, really looked. His eyes were flat, not angry, but searching. Then he nodded once, slow. There was something in his face, like he already knew I wasn't coming back. As soon as I stepped into the women's restroom, I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I texted my friend, told her to call me in exactly 1 minute and pretend it was something urgent, something that needed me home now. I didn't explain everything in the message. There wasn't time, but I made it clear I needed help getting out of this. My phone buzzed right on time. I picked up and raised my voice. "Wait, what happened? Are you serious?" I stepped out of the stall and talked louder as I walked toward the sinks. "No, I can come now. I'll head straight there. Just stay with him, okay?" There were 2 other women in the restroom. I made eye contact with one, gave a small smile, and tried to look calm. I ended the call and checked my reflection. My hands were cold, but I kept my face straight. I walked out slowly, like nothing was wrong, and spotted him standing just outside, leaning against the wall near a vending machine. He looked at me as I approached. His eyes didn't blink much. I told him there was an emergency with my cousin, that I had to leave immediately. I tried to keep my tone casual, apologetic, like I was disappointed. He didn't say anything for a second, then just asked, "When do you think we can meet again?" I told him I'd message him later and started stepping back. He didn't argue, didn't press, just turned and walked in the other direction. I didn't watch where he went. I turned toward the main entrance and walked fast, passing people without looking at them. I didn't break into a run, but every step felt too slow. Outside, I waved down the first taxi I saw. Once inside, I locked the door and gave my address in a clipped voice. The driver barely glanced at me. As we pulled away, I finally let my breath out. My heart was still hammering, and my hands were gripping my bag tight. I didn't look back through the window. I didn't want to know if he'd followed me out. Back in my room, I sat on the floor for a long time. That sick feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. My phone buzzed with his name on the screen. First message: "Hope your cousin's okay." Then, a minute later, "Let me know if you want to talk about it." And finally, "If you made that up, it wasn't very convincing." I didn't reply. I stared at the screen for a while, then blocked his number. Went to my social accounts, removed him from everything, blocked him everywhere. I checked my privacy settings twice, made sure nothing was public. He never tried to contact me again, at least not that I could tell. I didn't see him around campus, and he never showed up in my messages under another name. But for weeks after that, I kept looking over my shoulder when walking home. I changed my route back to the dorms. I avoided them all completely. Every time a message came from an unknown number, I felt that cold wave pass over me again. I told only one friend the full story. She said I did the right thing, leaving calmly, not confronting him. I still think about how easily that day could have gone another way. I was lucky it happened in a public place. I was lucky I had my phone. But the scariest part was realizing that someone can seem thoughtful and clever in messages and still carry something deeply wrong inside them. Now, whenever I plan a first meeting, I choose busy places. I tell at least 2 people exactly where I'll be. And I watch for signs, the ones I ignored that day, like someone talking more about control than connection, or watching people like they're just pieces in a game. I don't trust words anymore. I watch actions, and I always plan how to leave.